Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Because of other scheduling, Senator Howe is here first. Can you all hear me now? Yes. Can you hear me now? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 78. This bill deals with peace workers, and that's spelled P-I-E-C-E, not P-E-A-C-E. Yes. Currently, peace workers, who are mostly women who work in their homes and are paid by the piece they produce, are exempted from minimum wage. And what this bill does is include them in the minimum wage. Last year, on the floor of the Senate, Senator Spruill had a bill. We amended his bill to include the peace workers. His was dealing with the Jim Crow, but when it got over to the House, they stripped out the peace workers.
All right. Any questions of the sponsor? Senator Marsden.
Thank you. Senator Howe,
Yes.
the only thing that, are any of these positions, considered like kind of sheltered work where somebody, because of their incapacity, could only maybe turn out a couple of things a day when maybe somebody else could do 24, and therefore it would be difficult to pay them the minimum wage?
No, there's provision number 11 that covers them in the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Existing language.
All right. Anyone in the audience have a different opinion or a supportive opinion? Anybody with a different who's opposed to the bill? All right, it's before us. Move to report. All right, there's been a motion to report. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, nay.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Thank you.
All right. Senator Donovan, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 567 before you today. It is
567.
Yes, sir. It's a Section 1 bill that that directs the Bureau of Insurance to change the base minimum for disability coverage. So this is disability insurance that either an employee pays for or an employer pays for. And right now, for maternity leave or childbirth leave, that is set at 6 weeks, and many make exceptions to 8 weeks for a C-section. And Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, there's a great deal of evidence in science that shows 12 weeks is really needed. It's in the best interest of both the business and the mother and the child. So this bill would direct the Bureau of Insurance to change the new state standard to 12 weeks for childbirth.
All right, you all have heard any questions of the patron? All right, any support from the audience? All right.
Move the report.
Whoa. Anybody in opposition? No. All right, there's,
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
okay. Senator Edwards?
Why is this a Section 1 bill rather than the code?
I'm sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
It's not a Section 1 bill.
Okay.
Section 1 carries full force of law.
Again,
All
Mr.
right.
Chairman, move the report.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 567. All those in favor vote aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, you're finished.
Thank
Ayes
you.
15, no 0.
Okay. All right, next will be a subcommittee report by Senator Spruill on energy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
Everybody pay attention.
first, SB 354, Senator Bell's bill, at the request of the patron that this bill be stricken.
All right, there's a motion and a second to strike Senate Bill 354. All those in favor of striking it, vote aye. Those opposed, nay. All right, 354 is gone. Okay, next is, okay, go ahead.
Senate Bill 379, Mr. Chairman. My pike, that's the bill that the subcommittee voted, the PBI 41. That includes 376 suitable line, Senate Bill 912, Senator Bell. The full committee last week voted on it, but at your request to bring it back. I talked with our lawyer, Tom. He said there has not been any input from anybody on this, so I will again move to we're
PBI in 376
I
and
thought we did that
379.
already. Mr. Chairman, I have to roll, I'm sorry, to roll Senate Bill 376 and Senate Bill 912 into 379. Beg your pardon?
And then we're going to PBI all three of them. Okay.
All right, one at a time.
I've got it. All right, we'll do one at a time. All right, first,
It's Senate Bill 376.
376. All those in favor of passing by indefinitely? Okay, record your vote. He wants to do it separately. Okay.
All right.
15-0. Ayes 15, nays 0.
The next one, Senate Bill 912.
All right, Senator Bell's bill, motion and a second to PBI 912. All those in favor, vote aye. Opposed, nay.
And now, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 379, my pike.
Okay. All right, it's been a motion and a second to pass by indefinitely. Senate Bill 379. All those in favor, vote aye. Opposed, nay. That's passed by indefinitely. Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, the next bill that we have was passed by the committee on 120 as Senate Bill 504 by Senator Peterson. Senator Peterson's here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 504 was passed by the committee, but I have a substitute, which I think
Was passed or passed?
passed, like approved.
Approved.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
But not, okay, still.
But I have a
before.
substitute,
Okay.
which I'd like to, with your permission, distribute. If I could have that adopted, I'll explain.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, it's before us.
All right, the substitute deals with, this has to do with solar panels and homeowners associations, and this is a bill I had years ago that was approved and became law, but we didn't really give enough guidance as to what was reasonable versus unreasonable. All the parties at interest, which is to say the solar community and the HOA community, have agreed on these standards, which you now have before you, and I don't think there's any opposition at this point. So that's basically what the bill does. It just gives guidance as to what solar panels will fit this definition already in the code.
Senator Norman.
What's the difference between the bill that the subcommittee considered and what's before us? I thought there was a recitation about $1,000 over the cost, and is that still in here, or you?
Well, no, the bill that I presented, Senator Norman, simply talked about a presumption and reversing the presumption. I had a lot of sort of lawyerly language in it, and they didn't like that. They said, just give us the percentages, and so it's increased by 5% in cost or reduce energy production by 10%. And everybody was fine with those standards, so that's, I'm not going to argue with them.
All right. Any other questions? All right, anyone in the audience want to speak in support?
Just real quick.
All right, be brief. Brief is good.
We'll be brief. Chairman Sasslaw, members of the committee, Aaron Such, Solar United Neighbors. We're a nonprofit organization that represents a network of about 10,000 solar supporters here in Virginia. We support it. We think it's a good way to the balance between the rights of homeowners and the rights of a HOA to impose restrictions. Thank you.
Mr.
Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Shippey with Sierra Club, we support the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Trick Perrin representing Community Associations Institute, we support the bill and thank Senator Peterson's leadership on the issue and his always outstanding love for homeowners associations.
All right, anyone in opposition? Okay, bills before.
Move the report, Mr.
There's a
Chairman.
motion and a second to report. All those in favor, vote aye. Opposed, nay.
Ayes 15, no zero.
All right, now, Mr. Chairman, out of order, I want to bring up Senator Lucas' 988 electric bus,
Okay. Senator Lucas.
Senate Bill 988.
988.
Authorize Virginia to implement a project designed to encourage the proliferation of school buses that are fueled in whole or in part by electricity. That's what it says.
Okay. All right, there's a motion and a second to adopt the substitute to
Second.
988. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, the substitute's before us.
By the way, Mr. Chairman, it was moved recommended by the committee to report 41.
Okay. Senator Norman.
I'd asked Senator Sproul, did the subcommittee consider this substitute that's before us?
No, sir. That's being passed out now, I believe. No, sir, we did not. We
What
did not
basically
consider.
is the difference between that and the original?
No, we
Well,
did
my
not.
question is, whose bill is this?
Senator Lucas.
The substitute, yours?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Senator Lucas, you need to go down there. You need to go down there.
You want to go and explain what we're doing
Well, if you
here?
don't mind if I do it from here.
Sure,
The-
absolutely.
He looks like he's not a senator, I don't think, though. He looks like one.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the substitute, in essence, says that this is to promote the development and proliferation of electric school buses in the Commonwealth, and also to make sure that the rate adjustment clause to recover the cost of one or more electric school buses projects pursuant to this division, the savings will go to the locality. And of course, the purchase of these buses will be owned or managed by the school district and the electric company. But it also indicates that no electric company will be permitted to transport students on these buses. Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Newman.
maybe you, or either one of you, but the delta between what the bus costs, which I understand is $100,000, and the electric bus, which I'm being told is $300,000, who is going to pay for that cost?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Chris Nolan with McGuire Woods on behalf of Dominion Energy, and spoke at the subcommittee as well. Mr. Chairman, the delta is basically the cost of the battery in the bus, and that will be a cost that the ratepayers will pay for ultimately because this is a grid resource. And the reason is that these buses will be hooked up to the grid at night for charging purposes to fuel them, but when they're not being used for that purpose, they are a grid resource to stabilize the grid or to reduce peak demand at that time.
Thank you for your
So
help.
that's the benefit to the ratepayer is that stabilization piece.
Mr. Chairman, one more question, I guess.
Senator Newman.
Is this deemed to be in the public interest and required to be done?
Correct, Mr. Chairman. The bill does declare this to be in the public interest. The difference between the substitute and the bill in the subcommittee, though, is that it removed the language that the costs were deemed to be reasonably and prudently incurred. So, and that was at
Okay.
after the SEC and the AG's office.
Mr. Chair.
And then Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chairman, my question would be, and you hit the magic phrase, how is the increased cost being distributed over the ratepayers' base worthy of a declaration in the statute that it's in the public interest?
Mr. Chairman, what's the process for which the cost is
Tell me,
recovered?
Mr. Chairman, excuse me,
Sir.
what justifies putting the affirmative statement in the bill that it's in the public interest?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the purpose of the bill is to remove the hurdle for these school districts as they replace buses. It's not a mandate to go out and buy a new electric bus, but as they replace the buses that are scheduled to come due for replacement, this removes the hurdle for them to go to an electric bus.
Mr. Chairman, that's going to cost more.
To the school district, the cost is going to be the same because they would have otherwise spent $100,000
Mr.
for
Chairman,
a
I
diesel
understand
bus.
that. Who's picking up the cost of the batteries, which is an extraordinary expense?
Mr. Chairman, that is the ratepayer because this is a resource being used for the grid.
All right,
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
When you were first talking, Mr. Nolan, you talked about something, about these buses stabilizing the grid.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, what can happen is at night or during the summer when the buses are plugged into the grid, it's called vehicle-to-grid technology. If there's fluctuations on the grid or we're reaching peak demand, these buses, the batteries, can be called upon to inject power that is stored in those batteries onto the grid. That's one of the reasons why we have for renewables, part of the problem with renewables is you cannot store the energy. This is the ability to do that and then to use it in other settings, for instance, summer, nighttime, whenever, to bring that energy back onto the grid after it's been stored.
Let me ask you a question myself. Are there going to be solar panels on the top of the buses?
No, sir.
You might think about that in the future, really.
Mr. Chairman.
All right,
Just
any
one.
other questions? Senator Newman.
One more question. What about the infrastructure, the GSU, the generation step-up transformers and all those that'll be needed to hook them into the grid? Is that going to be also part of the recoverable fee so that at the school, you'll actually have a GSU jumping up the power to the grid power and that'll all be covered by the
That's
ratepayers?
associated infrastructure, Mr. Chairman, and that would be part of the cost with the battery.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Bell.
I don't know if you can answer this or it'd be better for somebody else, but I would also assume I've got an electric vehicle. You wouldn't have oil changes and other maintenance requirements, electric vehicles, so there would be savings in other ways. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes, and the bill also provides that those savings inure to the benefit of the locality, and they get to retain those savings, and it's estimated to be somewhere around $7,000 to $8,000 a year that the localities per bus will save in maintenance costs and fuel costs.
Mr. Chairman, in response to Senator Bell, you can find that language on lines 36 through 42. 43.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Deeds.
maybe I could add just a question to staff. I understand there's a House bill. Does the substitute get us closer to the language in the House bill?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dietz, I believe the House bill, while going after the same thing, the language is significantly different.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Surville.
And I don't know if this is for Mr. Nolan
We need
or
to
staff
move
or
on.
somebody, but is there any kind of cap on this program, or is it just, we're going to be buying electric school buses in perpetuity and ratepayers going to be picking it up forever?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I can answer that. So there are two caps. One is 40% of the buses in the service area. That's the maximum that can be replaced, and that's estimated to be 300 buses a year for 5 years. There's a sunset on this at 2025. So at most, it would be 1,500 buses during the course of the program.
Mr. Chairman, again, to respond to Senator Serval, you can find that language on lines 44 through line 48, where it specifically says, any such utility implementing an electric bus, school bus project shall limit participation in such project to a maximum of 40% in the aggregate.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak in favor? Okay. Senator Eben.
Yes. When you talk about stabilizing the grid or having that energy stored in case there should be a need for additional power, how much, if you were talking about a blackout or something, how many, is this enough, how strong is it in terms of how many homes could this avoid blacking out if there is such an equivalent?
Senator Dan Weekluth, Dominion. So when you think about it, the batteries are 220 kilowatt hours each per bus. So if you do the math on that, when we get to 2025, we will have about 330 megawatts of capacity out there. We would able to draw that energy back onto the grid. Theoretically, what we're hoping to get to is a point where hot summer months, peak evenings, where we won't have to start a power station. We can draw the energy out of those buses. That's about enough energy for about 15,000 residential homes.
Thank you.
All right, anyone in opposition? All right, bills before us.
Move report. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 988 be reported. All those in favor vote aye. Opposed, nay.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Sproul.
The next two are similar in nature. Is Senate Bill 860 by Senator Mason and 998 by Senator Lucas. Senator Mason provide that prior to January 1, 2034, the construction or purchase of any electric utility of one or more offshore wind generation facilities located in federal water that's interconnected with directly with the Commonwealth, having an aggregate rate a capacity of 5,200 megawatts. In Senator Lucas, they require the State Corporation Commission to allow Dominion Energy Virginia to recover all costs of certain utilities owned and utility operated offshore wind generating facilities. That's what the two bills speaking of. The committee, Mr. Chairman, voted on both bills to report to the full committee 4-1. Also, it says that there may be a substitute on both bills.
Yes, sir.
And Senator Mason has 860s.
Mr. Chairman, there are substitutes to both bills. My bill number 860 and Senator Lucas's bill number, help me there, please, I'm sorry. 990. Our bills are nearly identical with one distinctive paragraph that is different. We, on behalf of Senator Lucas, I hand-delivered the substitute to your offices on Thursday.
Yes.
So you'd have the opportunity to see it in advance. And if you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I'll take you quickly through the combined bill. If you like, okay. So, Mr. Chairman, if you're, so I move the substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Substitutes before us.
And if everyone has a copy of the substitute, Section A is identical to my bill, which reads my previous bill, which reads 5,200 megawatts as being in the public interest into the code. We're already seeing economic development, advancements, and opportunities around the Port of Virginia. This is incredibly important to signal to the industry we're serious about wind on an ongoing basis. Starting on line 17 in paragraph B, this is Senator Lucas's language, virtually to a T, that speaks to one particular project
thank you.
of no less than 2,500 megawatts and no more than 3,000. That's the first major project. Down on line, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I get my lines correct. I'm looking at an unlined version. So starting on about line 24, we speak to these costs, this being in the public interest, and the costs being presumed to be reasonably and prudent, provided, and you see they line out competitive solicitation and procurements, cost of energy, and this puts a cap into the bill. So this is different than you've seen from either. So that is on line 28. We know that renewable energy and wind energy is more expensive. This reads a cap in that does not exceed 1.6 times the comparable cost of conventional simple cycle combustion turbine. So that reads a cap for the overall cost in, and then 3I speaks to this project being done between 24 and 28, which was in the original bill. Paragraph number 2 is different. It removes, and currently there's 100 basis point of enhanced rate in the code to incent wind energy, which was put in a bill 7 years ago. Since we are moving forward aggressively, we hope, on offshore wind, this removes that enhancement that is currently in the code. On page 3, we speak to the fact that, as we've discussed, this is more expensive energy, so we are passing the cost through with the exception of low-income residents. And this attempts to get at some of the larger industry and data centers that are already driving towards renewable energy and making strides themselves. So we work to carve them out because they're working on their own to get to a renewable basis that will be faster than this bill. There is someone here that I saw on the way in that takes exception to that, so we may want to hear from them in a moment. On paragraph 4, this speaks to low-income residential customers. So this is more expensive. They can opt out if they are a recipient of state or federally funded public assistance programs. So this directly tries to focus on low-income ratepayers and try to keep them from having to pay the increased cost. Section C is an enhanced version of economic development. This is largely Senator Lucas's language, but combines some of mine that just speaks to the fact that we're looking this as much as a renewable project as we are an economic development opportunity to build a supply chain in the United States of America, but particularly out of the Commonwealth of Virginia. You see B speaks to the economic development benefits, C to working with the Chief Workforce Development Officer and VEDP. D, priority given to local workers. And again, we're speaking to historically economic disadvantaged communities, trying to get as many people involved in this project, particularly from low-income areas, as we possibly can. Paragraph D speaks to competitive procurement, and that a substantial majority of services and equipment must be competitively procured, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, and then demonstrates economic development, so more economic development and capital improvement and job creation language. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Section E is the sole difference between Senator Lucas's bill and mine. I am a participant on the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, which is interesting to say the least. They are very focused on the proliferation of wind on the East Coast and what it does to both the environmental and the fisheries in and around these wind farms. And so this is our attempt to get out front of it and to look at best management practices to avoid adverse impacts to wildlife, natural resources, ecosystems, or any other water-dependent usage, which would be our fishing industries. So this tries to get us out front to looking at understanding that there is an impact and do what we can from the outside to avoid that. That paragraph is the difference between Senate Bill 860, which is mine, and 980, which is Senator Lucas's. Beyond that, the final, we are quarterly reporting on timeline and budget, and the State Corporation Commission retains ongoing authority to review the reasonableness and prudence of any increases that the projects may see. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, those are the two bills to the best of my knowledge.
Mr. Chairman. Surville.
Scott.
I have one after.
Surville.
I guess question for the patron is,
Yes,
is
sir.
there any, with regard to paragraph E, which is in yours but not in Senator Lucas's, is there a reason that it's not in both?
I had pressed the issue because I had seen it, quite frankly, on the 13-state East Coast Fisheries Management Board. So I'm not certain that it was something of interest to Senator Lucas. I'll let her speak for herself, but I think it's something we should get out in front of. That's the only reason it's different.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, we would like to have two vehicles, although very, very similar moving forward. Just, Lord knows what would happen provided we can get it out of this committee and our side down the road a piece.
All right. Senator Rabin.
Yes, and I don't know if this is for Senator Lewis or for Dominion. The extra costs incurred for the tests, or the costs incurred for having the turbine test thus far, who's paying for those costs? Is that the ratepayers or Dominion Corporation?
Well, my bill does not pertain to that, so I can
Okay,
ask
well, maybe
them.
something
And
Dominion can
This
help
this
with
is
that.
trying to read in keeping the momentum and going forward.
Okay.
But, I'm sure Bill can answer that but that does not pertain to Bill 860, just.
Senator Evan, the offshore wind pilot, you referred to the costs, and I'm recalling those as $300 million, were filed as, if you recall, the Grid Transformation Act, as what was called a customer credit offset in that act, effectively handled in base rates, was not done as a rate adjustment clause.
Senator Norman.
Senator Mason, going back, I have two areas of questions. Going back over to subparagraph B, and there's the affirmation again that this is in the public interest, but as the SCC is reviewing this, there's a language in there that this was presumed to be in the public interest. Is that shifting the burden of proof as a SCC or anybody else is reviewing this?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Norman, I do not believe so, sir, because it says the project is in the public interest. Then as we go down, we say that the reasonableness and prudence of such cost associated with the project are presumed to be reasonable and prudently incurred if in fact, and then we stick to number one, utilities complied with competitive. So if you have followed I, triple I along the way, we are saying that we're presuming that those costs are reasonably and prudent. So it's public interest first for the project, sir, and then reasonably and prudent if you follow those steps.
Senator Norman,
Thank you.
another question?
I do, and the next one is a little more sensitive, but going over to subparagraph C, little Roman numeral 4, and it says, giving priority to hiring of local workers, including workers from historically economic disadvantaged communities.
Yes,
And then it goes on to define what is a historically economically disadvantaged community. And share with me why this is only focused on individuals of color. There are other communities of interest out there that are Latinos and Native Americans.
No question.
Why are they excluded?
And they should not be, sir, and you're right, it does say people of color and, so I think that's a good catch, Mr. Chairman,
It
excuse
really
me.
is.
And Mr. Chairman and Senator Norman, we can make that an or.
Yes.
And so I think that's a great catch.
All right,
My-
you hear the suggestion, the amendment before us?
Yes, I am. That's,
All those in
that's a good
favor of
amendment.
That
adopting
is-
the word "or," say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's in the bill now.
And I thank the gentleman.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
question.
Servo.
So I'm still just confused why we're going with 2 vehicles. I just don't understand that.
Well, one's got, as he pointed out, his.
In the public interest.
This environmental thing with respect to sea life and bats and squirrels or whatever, and hers doesn't have that.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I appreciate there's a difference in the bills, but I thought that's what committees are there to resolve. So I'm just not clear why we're going with 2 bills. That's what I don't understand.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Serval, I would like to keep 2 separate vehicles. I'm a lot more comfortable with what's going on in Commerce and Labor over here and on our chamber than I am maybe in another chamber, and like to make sure we have a couple of different options as we move things along.
And that's our agreement.
And Mr. Chairman, and that language was pressed and sold to me and not to Senator DeLucas, so, you know.
They don't come to me very often.
You can be on the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission if you'd like, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, if we are going to have 2 vehicles, do we not need to amend the other bill so it says "or which are people of color"?
We would when we get there, yes.
Okay, whatever point's
we'll
appropriate.
Do that. We'll get to Senator Lucas's bill in a second. Right now, we've got one before us.
Move report as amended.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and second that the.
Mr. Chairman, have you heard from the opposition?
Yeah. Is there anyone want to speak in favor of the bill? And then those in opposition. By the way, it's been my observation over the years that if you seem to get the attention of the State Corporation Commission and cooperation if you put in there in the public interest than if you don't.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Sewell.
Since it's a subcommittee report, see that line lining up? Usually, I'm hoping that you could abide by report. Because if you want to get out of here, you got 10 people want to speak.
Can I
Wait a minute, don't chill. I'm trying to say something. I'm trying to say that line is long. They have heard this before in the subcommittee, so it shouldn't be this long anyway.
If this
So I'm
bill's
hoping.
been, if you all, any of you who have testified before the subcommittee, you had an ample time to hear it then. Just all you need to say, don't give me any explanation, just say in favor or against.
Mr. Chairman, suckling, Mr. Chairman, I'm hoping that we could at least live with the 5 minutes and 5 minutes, cut it off. Please, if you don't, yeah, keep on talking.
We're going to make it 3 minutes.
Mr.
Those
Chair.
in favor, just come up and say whether you're in favor or not and then leave.
Mr. Chair, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
In light of what you just said, when you got the term in the public interest, as in this bill on line 14, doesn't that mean you're not only getting the State Corporation Commission's attention, but you're cutting them out of the decision-making? That's absolutely what you're doing, Mr. Chair.
I understand that, but let me just give you a personal example. For 2 years in a row, this committee, or twice, this committee voted out almost unanimously, okay, about undergrounding these distribution lines, not the transmission lines, the distribution lines. Twice, it was rejected by the SCC. Only when we put in there that it was in the public interest did it make it through. And as a result, the utilities are undergrounding these lines.
Well,
okay?
Mr. Chair, my point is that when you say it's in the public interest, that says to the State Corporation Commission, you don't have a decision to make anymore. We've already made the decision.
Not totally, but it's a hint. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Hayes Fromme with Ørsted, the world's largest offshore wind developer. We support the bill. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Abby Watson, Head of Government Affairs for Siemens Gamesa in North America. We're the world's largest manufacturer of offshore wind turbines, looking to establish supply chain jobs here in Virginia, and we support the bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Ryan O'Toole representing Avangrid Renewables, the developer of the Kitty Hawk offshore wind project. We support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray, Dominion Energy, we support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Bruce Burkett of the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Coalition, we support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Angela Navarro with the Governor's Office, we support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Jason Parker, Building Trades, we support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Charles Skelly, IBEW Local 666 here in Richmond, Virginia. We support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Virginia Building and Construction Trades Council, we support the bill.
Mr. Chair, members of committee, Emily Hasty on behalf of the Hampton Roads Chamber, and we support the bill.
And Mr. Chairman, I mentioned that Mr. Levy had addressed on paragraph 3 as I walked in, looking at lines 42 to 48. And so I think he wanted to speak to the committee in opposition.
Quickly.
Mr. Chairman, not in opposition, and I will recall in days past you offered blindfolds and cigarettes to folks in my position. Certainly appreciate some consideration in that regard. Data Center Coalition's trade association of data centers across the Commonwealth. Virginia has the largest data center market in the world by far. 2018, our economic impact resulted in over 45,000 jobs, paying more than $3.5 billion. As you all move forward with this legislation, we have been assured that we will continue to have discussions around the language. 2 items of specific concern: cost containment, and there are several amendments in this version of the legislation that begin to shrink that cost risk. That's very important because what you're going to do is create a cost differential for large consumers of electricity within Dominion's territory, which is going to be very different from those outside Dominion's territory, whether that be the co-ops directly across the street or utilities in other parts of the country. And there's concern about our ability to grow under those circumstances. So we're very hopeful that we'll continue to constrain costs. The second one, as Senator Mason indicated, is concern. A lot of data centers have been driving renewable development in Virginia. A real catalyst. Dominion has told us about 52% of all renewable energy in Virginia now are planned prior to this bill came from the data centers and investments they have made. Under this legislation, there is a narrow provision, and we're hoping to continue to work on that provision to recognize that there's been a lot of expense put forward. The way the bill's crafted now, data centers that continue to go with outside providers of electricity outside of Dominion to contract for 100% renewable energy would still have this surcharge leveled on them for wind energy that they're not using, and that creates a disincentive, I think, for folks that have been out front trying to really drive this clean energy transition. Mr. Chairman, I'm very appreciative of the time and also Senator Mason's indulgence in allowing me to state this.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassey, Virginia Manufacturers Association. We still have concerns about the SEC language has been commented. We also would like to see more work on the bypassable language. The reality for about 900 of Virginia's 2,600 manufacturers, they're energy intensive. If you force them to be captured under this and you drive rates up because it's a preference, and mind you, this project is twice as expensive as the next closest for renewable. So you're making a choice of a type of renewable, not just renewable. And if you force those companies to stay within it, some of them just can't compete under that price structure. So the reality is you won't be forcing them to buy the power, you'll be forcing them to move their jobs. So we want to continue to work on this and get it right so that we don't have to trade one industry for another, and we think that can be done before the end of session.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, Meade Browder with the Office of the Attorney General's Division of Consumer Counsel. We, of course, as you know, represent the millions of the utility customers that will be paying the bills. I'll be brief. First, I want to note that the Attorney General does recognize the benefits of large-scale offshore generation and the efforts that could lead to cleaning the state's economy. I want to say that this bill is, we believe, improved over the bill as introduced. We had a major concern that if there were cost overruns, of course, this project, one like it's never been done before in North America. It's very expensive. I believe about $8 billion is what's projected. But had there been cost overruns, the project ran into trouble. There was concern that the commission may have its hands tied to do something about that on the back end. I believe the new enactment clause 2 addresses that, so we appreciate that change. But really, I think going towards maybe Senator Deeds' concerns, that's really our fundamental concern. The presumption of reasonableness and prudence for something this large in expense. We just feel that determination, we recognize that the General Assembly has had exercised that prerogative before, but we just feel compelled to note that for something this expensive, before the ratepayers should be on the hook for those costs, we think they are best served in an evidentiary type proceeding that the Commission typically conducts to examine costs of this nature. And I believe the Commission staff may have done some bill impact analysis.
Chairman, we got one more speaker left, taking up all the time.
Yes, just think it'd be important for you all to understand exactly what type of costs we're talking about.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Kim Pate with the State Corporation Commission. Just wanted to bring up, we've been talking about cost here, and we had previously identified a cost for the subcommittee for the offshore wind bill impact, and we have modified it just because now there is no bonus return on equity or profit margin built in. So the number would now be $12 per month or $144 per year for a typical residential customer for the cost of the offshore wind.
Yeah, everybody wants renewables, but you all don't want anybody to pay for it. That's a problem. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Certainly, we just quantified the numbers for you. Thank you.
All right.
What's that? Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I would say I think that's maybe the start, $12 with no supply chain, no economic development, no work being done here in Virginia. I think that is estimated to go down, and as it becomes more mature, you're talking about more in the $4 a month range. So.
All right, the bill's before us.
The report.
860.
As amended.
As amended. The substitute is before us as amended. All those in favor of 860 vote aye. Those opposed, nay.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Okay. Senator Lucas?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. With the understanding that the bills are similar in nature with the exception of
You don't have
Section
paragraph
E. Sir?
You don't have paragraph E, right.
That's correct. But with that exception, I'd just like to make the word amendment on line 68, right after a majority of the population of which are people of color, strike and insert or.
Second.
All right, you've heard the amendment. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that, well, unless you have the same people who want to speak.
No.
Move the bill report, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Second.
Is motion and a second to report the substitute for
988.
Excuse me, 988.
As amended.
As amended. Vote aye. Opposed, nay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
All right.
All right, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Spruill.
The last one we have is Senate Bill 851. As before the subcommittee, it failed the subcommittee, but we brought it back to have some amendments. So what we did, Mr. Chairman, we wrote Senate Bill 532, Senate Edwards Bill, and Senate Bill 876, Senator Morrison bill is at 851. Mr. Chairman, this is the big bill supposedly, and I called myself putting on everyone's desk on this committee, so you would have it, the change that was made from the House, but there is a substitute with that. So what you're being passed out now is pretty much the exact same except a few changes. I believe it's not a whole lot of changes. So when you see this thick bill, especially you lawyers who like to read, that is not much different, a whole lot of different. Help me out, Jennifer, it's not a whole lot of different than what was passed out that I put on your desk Friday. Except a couple of changes, and I made notes of what I gave you on your desk Friday. I made notes on the substitute that might be brought before you. So that way, Mr. Chairman, that no one on this committee could be said that this is the first time I've seen this bill. You have seen it before. I gave it to you Friday, except those changes, and I note those changes on the big thing that you have. And since McCullough now have those changes. I hope I clarified the things for the lawyers on this commission because they're going to ask a lot of questions, Jen.
I know.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to address the differences between what's before you? Well, hold on.
Hold on, just one minute, Senator.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, one clarification to what Senator Sproul said. The substitute that has been handed to you is identical to what passed out of the House committee. The differences are going to be handled through line amendments, which Tom is about to hand out, and I can walk you through what
That's
those
right.
line amendments are.
Talk to me. But everybody's in agreement. Yes.
Do you want me to give an overview of the bill first, or just go straight to the amendments? Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mr. Chair, while you're reading, I'll just give you a brief overview of the bill. This is the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which would bring Virginia's electric grid to 100% carbon-free by 2050 by addressing both the supply and the demand side. On the supply side, the bill enacts a statewide clean energy standard and helps jumpstart offshore wind, rooftop solar, and energy storage in ways that will create thousands of jobs in these sectors. And a recent analysis estimates that by going to 100% clean energy, Virginia could create an additional 13,000 jobs each year between now and 2050, including thousands of jobs in offshore wind, many of which would be in the Hampton Roads and Newport News areas. On the demand side, the bill significantly increases energy efficiency by setting binding energy-saving targets for the utilities. The bill mitigates against any increase in bills, particularly with protections for low to moderate income customers. And I want to thank the committee first for your patience. This bill, what you have before you is the product of hundreds of hours of negotiation between all of the stakeholders to take Virginia from near the back of the pack as far as clean energy to near the front. And so there are 3 changes to the substitute. And then a fourth with the change that you just made to Senator Lucas and Senator Mason's bills, because this one does mirror language in those bills. So I'll start with that one first. And that would be on line.
1252.
No. Well, so this bill mirrors the wind language from Senator Lucas and Senator Mason's bill. The difference is this allows part of offshore wind that would be used towards the standard to be done by third parties, but otherwise mirrors language that they have. And so the change that you made to the definition of a historically disadvantaged community, you would also have to make on this bill on line
252, maybe somewhere else.
On line 252. The
All right, hold on.
Okay.
Okay.
And line 1217, Tom.
All right,
and
so
line
on 252, halfway down the line between the word color and double I, change and to or.
And that same amendment would need to be made on line 1217.
And on what line?
1217.
Okay, you heard the amendments. All those in favor of adopting the amendments, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, those amendments are adopted to the substitute.
Okay, the next amendment would be to reinstate a specific schedule for coal plant retirements that were removed from the House bill before it was heard in that committee. But all of the stakeholders have agreed that that schedule needs to be put back in. So that's,
Chairman,
Yes.
you know, we used to have a protocol in the Senate many years ago, like last year, where we really don't care what the House does. We are concerned about the Senate bills and what the Senate bills are doing.
right, and so we are actually putting language that we want that the House took out. So, okay, all the stakeholders want this amendment made.
Okay.
Yes, how about that? All right.
All right, there we go.
Second, the second amendment just fixes a drafting error that caused a substantive change when a sentence was compressed. The sentence was supposed to exclude biomass except for a facility such as West Rocks, where they use biomass to create energy on site that is not put back on the grid. But there was a sentence error that specifically included that. So all of the stakeholders would like that second amendment made that was handed out to you.
Let me ask you a question, Senator McClellan. This line 1252 amendment, the second part says any phase one and phase two utility shall retire all generating units principally fueled by oil with a rated capacity in excess of 500 megawatts and all coal-fired electric generating units within the Commonwealth. Is that by 2024 as well? That's by 2024 as well?
Yes.
Okay, might have made it a little clearer, but okay, that's fine.
Okay. And then the third amendment is one that would allow utilities to recover the cost for renewable and energy efficiency projects from customers, but ensuring that those customers that have entered into contracts to purchase renewables directly from the utility will not pay twice. So that's the final amendment on the back.
Okay, hold on.
Tom, that's the one on the back, right?
Search.
So those are the differences between the substitute with these amendments. Yes, that those be the only changes to what you were distributed on Friday.
Are there any questions of the patron of these proposed amendments? And remember, you've got this, and they're on the back, front and back. So-
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Senator
I
Edwards.
have a question on line 1252. It seems confusing. B1, by December 31, 2028, each phase 1 and 2 utilities shall retire all biomass-fired electric generating utilities that do not co-fire with coal. What is that supposed to mean? I'm not sure I understand.
I'm going to defer to my subject matter expert, who can probably explain it clearer than I can.
I don't get it.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. Senator Edwards, could you repeat the question, please, really quickly?
The question is, what does this line mean in 1252 and 1253? The retire all biomass-fired electric generating units that do not co-fire with coal.
Certainly, Senator, that is intended to apply specifically to a set of biomass generating units. There are a set of units that the utilities operate that co-fire with coal. Those are covered under separate provisions, some of which are in the line amendments. So this is intended to apply specifically to those biomass-only fired units and set a specific retirement date for those.
Is there somewhere else in this bill that would make it clear? I'm missing something.
The second line amendment.
Second line amendment, okay. Oh, okay, I see.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
Lines 144 through 165 refers to a board. What's the board?
That is. Hold 1 second. The air board.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Marston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator McClellan, one of the concerns I have, one of the co-ops in my area, Novak, operates a plant in South Boston that deals with just residual biomass. In other words, leftover wood products that, if left to themselves, would turn to methane. And I was looking in here. I don't think that is a residual biomass is certainly superior to cutting down something live, if you will. Was that being considered anywhere in the bill to allow for residual biomass to be used?
Yes, where that residual biomass is not put on the grid itself. So for example, West Rock uses biomass to generate energy that is used on site, but that biomass is not then put on the grid.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Chairman, so a facility like the one in South Boston that uses residual biomass, if that goes on the grid, that would not be allowed?
It would be allowed, but not count towards the standard.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Servo.
can we at least get this in the right posture? So I move to adopt the amendments.
Thought we had, okay. All right, you've heard the amendments. All right, all those in favor of adopting those line amendments, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the amendments to the substitute are adopted. Was this bill was heard in the subcommittee?
Mr. Chairman, now, for 3 weeks, Mr. Chairman, we've been hearing that bill was this close. The bill was not reported out of subcommittee, but we brought it back. For 3 weeks, we've been hearing this close. Even as late as this morning, we finally worked it out. So the stakeholders, as the senator called, they should not have to say nothing, the stakeholders. Because for 3 weeks, I have never seen, let me talk about the lawyers for a minute, excuse me, Tommy. I have never seen lawyers take 3 weeks to talk about nothing. So the stakeholders, Mr. Chairman, all they should have to do is to raise their hand. I was assured by Dominion, I was assured by the senator, I was assured by all the stakeholders, they are all in agreement. So they shouldn't have to say nothing, but just raise your hand to save time. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, the stakeholders, if you are satisfied, raise your hand, please, the stakeholders. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the stakeholders. Now, as for those from the opposition, I can't speak for those. But since we've been working on this thing for a long time, Mr. Chairman, off and on, we changed it so many times, we're finally at it now, and all the stakeholders, they are on one accord. It should be just those who are in opposition that you should hear.
And the one thing I will say is because this bill in the wind provisions mirror provisions from Senator Lucas and Senator Mason's bills, the people that you just heard that have concerns with theirs, they probably have the same concerns with this one. The only difference between the wind provisions of those bills and this one.
Mr. Chairman, I'm talking about the stakeholders, Jennifer. I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, now my second thing is that because we've been in this for so long, my second thing, Mr. Chairman, that if the stakeholders, and to save time, if the stakeholders are willing to fight this thing all over again, then I would like to make the same motion I made before, that we PBI this bill, if they're going to keep on doing it.
Senator Norman.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know we can't cure it right now, but just thinking about going forward, we spent a lot of time on this bill, and not just in the subcommittee, but reading it and trying to understand it and talking with stakeholders. And here we are with an amendment in the nature of the substitute at the 11th hour and 59th minute with basically a new bill that's been tweaked, hadn't been vetted by the subcommittee. And I don't know what we do going forward, but we really need to give some consideration to it so that if we're going to use the subcommittees, that they have an opportunity to review the bills that are going to be presented.
Well, Jenny, I would agree with you, but certainly in the long years that I've been here, this is not the first time. And this is a bill that's going to be a work in progress all the way through to the governor's signature. And everybody here knows it. And this won't be the first bill that's been like that. We've had a ton of them, including Medicaid expansion and a batch of other bills. So I won't mention Medicaid expansion. But anyway, I know the SCC, you're opposed to it. No?
No, sir. No, sir.
I'm shocked.
No, the commission never takes a position.
Okay.
On any bill.
Yeah.
Now, I do come bearing information about what the bill would do on impacts on customer bills. But again, that's not a position. That's information so you can make an informed decision.
Okay. I know it'll have, all things that we do here have an impact on bills.
There are many impacts on the bills. Some go up, some go down, some are neutral.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, this one is a big bill. I mean, this thing is going from voluntary to mandatory. I think we ought to hear the impact on consumers for this one because it's a multi-year, multi-decade impact on consumers.
All right. Let's hear from the SCC.
Mr. Chairman, after the SCC, you're talking about those in opposition, right, Mr. Chairman? Those in opposition.
Well, they claim they don't have a position.
Well, they had 3 weeks.
We really
Mr. Chairman.
don't have a position.
Who don't know?
All right, go ahead.
Certainly. And what you'll see in front of you is and I'm sorry, again, I'm Kim Pate with the State Corporation Commission. What you'll see is we've done an analysis looking at all the different components of Senate Bill 855 and trying to identify which components will have an impact on bills, customer bills, residential bills, whether it's an increase, decrease, or if we can't tell. What we've done is we've started at the top. You'll see that the current typical monthly bill, as of right now, is $122.66. Again, for an annual bill of $1,471. Now, what you'll see below it, I have lines 1 through 15. And these are items that are included in Senate Bill 851 that will all have an impact. And what we've done is we've identified them. You can see, like, for example, line 1 is offshore wind. And we show in the second column that the impact will be the increased rates. And we've given a range. And this is all for bills as of 2027 through 2030. So we picked a period of time to try and isolate and look at and see what it does. So you'll see that the first, I believe it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 line items, we've been able to actually estimate a range on the bill. That would be for the offshore wind. It would have between $11 and $12 a month impact during that period of time. For the 16 gigawatts of solar, it would have between a $10 and $15 a month impact. For RGGI costs, or Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, it'd be between $2 and $2.50. The energy storage resources between 50 cents and $1.50, and the biomass unit retirements. And one of the years will actually be a decrease of 20 cents, but would be a bill increase of 6 cents. Now, the rest of them that we've identified below, numbers 6 through 15 again. 15, we've identified whether there will be an increase or a decrease, but at this time, we really can't make an estimate as to what it is. But if you look down, what we've done is we've added up the minimum amounts that we were able to quantify. And down near the bottom, there's an estimated monthly minimum increase that we've identified of $23.30, which would result in an annual increase of $279.60. So what you have is your bill would be going from $122.66 down at the bottom to $145.96.
That's in 2030, right?
Between 2027 and 2030.
Okay,
One
so
other.
that's about 25% over 10 years, or 2.5% a year. You know, I remember you all estimating that I don't remember what it was with APCO, but with Dominion, if they undergrounded all of those lines, that the average customer's bill by 2030 would go up $5 or $6 a month. That's what you all said.
And that's still on track.
Right. And I went back, and although Dominion doesn't agree with your numbers, but that's okay. I spoke to several civic associations. At some of those, I had people get up and say, depending on where I was, they'd be willing to pay $25 to $50 more a month if it'll keep the damn lights on, okay? And you were going to stop it for $5 a month. You know, you can't do this stuff for free. Everybody says that we got a climate problem, and, you know, you can't fix the climate problem for free. And you all need to understand that.
And the commission does do whatever the code tells us to do. And since you were referring to the undergrounding, those numbers are not included in here. There would be an additional $10 a month for nuclear relicensing, the undergrounding that you were talking about, and several other things. So that would be another $10 upward pressure too, since you mentioned that.
Right. I have a question for the SEC.
Senator Servo.
Sir.
You know, you all do these analyses every time, and all you focus on is the cost that you can identify on a bill. Have you all quantified what the cost of however many more Virginians are going to have asthma or cancer, or what happens when Norfolk goes underwater, or all the other costs that we continue not to count by pumping carbon in the atmosphere? Do you all ever look at that when you make these decisions?
Hell no.
That is not the charge of the commission. We're an economic regulator. We look at the applications before us. The applications come in and they look to either underground lines, they look to build a generating facility, whatever the application is, and we analyze the costs there and what the impact is on customer bills. That is what the commission does. The rest of what you're saying, there may be costs, et cetera, but that's not a component of how you determine a customer rate.
Next. All right.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
What can you tell us what assumptions were made to come up with these numbers? Because frankly, when you do an estimate like this, there's ground rules and there's assumptions made. I suspect there are a number of them, and frankly, I would prefer to see them listed with this. Can you detail that for us, please?
Certainly. For the offshore wind, let me just look at my cheat sheets. What we did for that is the offshore wind, we have been talking with Dominion and looking at their estimates. They have been talking with their partners that they would look to build the offshore wind. And they have estimates that they have come up with. And we have worked with Dominion, and we've both come up to the same level of numbers. Now, what this does is the $11 to $12 does not include any fuel savings. But the problem is the fuel savings may or may not occur. And so we have not quantified that.
Mr. Chairman, so it sounds like your assumption was there would be no fuel savings.
No, sir. What we've identified.
That's what you just said.
No, our assumption is we've identified what will happen to the rate adjustment clause that would happen on the customer bill as pursuant to this code, pursuant to this bill. What happens in the fuel savings would not go through this rider that you are proposing in this bill. That would be through the fuel factor. That may or may not happen.
Mr. Chairman, following question. Would you say this is a best case, worst case, or an average?
I would say this is based on the information that we have today, what we would expect to happen. Now, obviously, costs change, items change, and we would reflect that going forward when we have better information. But it's based on the information that we have today. And we have run this through several of the items. If you look at the Reggie costs, we've talked with Dominion. Again, we're in agreement on all this. There's not a lot of play in these numbers with the information today.
Okay, thank you. And next, and then we need to vote on this bill, up or down. Yes, sir. You're opposed to it. Hop up here.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Again, Meade Brown on behalf of the Attorney General's office and all of the company's ratepayers, both in the wealthy parts of the state and in the poor parts of the state. At the outset, again, AG is supportive of the goals of moving towards a cleaner energy future. Ms. Pate spoke in detail, so I'm going to speak more generally here, and I'll be brief. This bill does effectuate a significant overhaul of how Virginia electric utilities will operate and serve their customers. There will be cost impacts. Ms. Pate just addressed that. Would note that the bill mandates about 20,000 megawatts in new generation and energy storage capacity. The language expressly eliminates the SEC's role to determine the reasonableness and prudence of these enormous costs. Just in conclusion, in their view, the legislation will prevent the regulator from being able to work to accomplish the Commonwealth's clean energy goals in a manner consistent with the ratepayer protections.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Next.
You.
Hello, Chairman Sasslaw. My name is Jorge with Food and Water Watch.
With who?
Food and Water Watch. We are opposed to this bill. It's fatally flawed. To your point, I think residents and Virginians want it, may be willing to pay more, but they want a fair system, not a rigged system, not one that actually is beneficial to Phase 1 and Phase 2 utilities. So I'll start with that. Giant hole in this bill doesn't actually deal with the biggest generating source of energy, which is gas plants. So doesn't talk about it. In fact, it changes language that line, and we haven't seen the bill, so couldn't give you the lines. As far as I know, it's line 931 to 937. That may have changed. It alters Section 8.2 to hurt ratepayers by allowing utilities to manipulate the rate cases and hamper SEC's oversight. That's not the only thing. The design is so poor, it gives away multiple carve-outs to dirty fuels like nuclear, landfills, and even pig feces.
How much carbon dioxide does nuclear burn?
Well, that's not the only greenhouse, and nuclear is not a clean energy. So you're not looking at the pollution to communities. This isn't just about carbon dioxide, right? This is about the pollution to these communities.
Senator Eben.
Yeah, just to encapsulate your opposition, would you say that this bill is not close enough to the Green New Deal? Is that why you're opposed to it?
Absolutely not to the provisions of the Green New Deal Act that have a tighter timeline.
That's what you want, though? You would like
That
it?
is what we would want, but also that this not be a rigged process.
Thank you.
We did this a couple years ago in setting the Grid Modernization Act. We're doing it again this year, so that's why we urge you to vote no. This bill will stink to high heaven if you pass it.
What's the name of your group?
Food and Water Watch.
Food and Water Watch, okay. All right, bills before us.
For the bill.
One more?
I apologize.
Sure.
No, thank you very much for your indulgence. My name's Lee Williams. I'm co-director of Green New Deal Virginia, the elephant in the room. And I would just like to thank everyone for their thoughtful comments on this bill. And we would just love to have the moratorium on fossil fuel projects incorporated somehow into this. Any plan you have has to address the urgency of the climate crisis, as you are all well aware. And a moratorium the first year is the best way to do it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, all right. Bills before us. Is there a motion to report the substitute as amended for 988? Excuse me, 851.
Mr. Chairman.
Right.
If there's a motion, a second, a quick comment, sir.
All right, Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, I know the subcommittee heard this and we did not agree to it. And I get a feeling it's going forward now. But I'll just tell you, this one is one that has the double whammy. This is not only in the public interest, but this also deems it as reasonable and prudent. That means they're going to do it. And really, it really doesn't matter what the cost is. Whatever the cost is, the ratepayers will pay. This is a mega bill, and it's a multi-decade bill with those provisions. And that would be a big deal. I don't know if the State Corporation Commission is right on the cost, but it really doesn't matter what the costs are. They're going to the ratepayers.
We got a problem, and either we deal with it or we don't, and we can study this thing from now.
Mr. Chairman, we got a motion on the floor. We have a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor of reporting Senate Bill 851 substitute as amended, vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Bill is reported.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more to do for you.
Senator Spruill.
Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 474 and Senate Bill 867. They are almost identical a lot, Mr. Chairman, and we couldn't work it out. So Senator Barker has a motion to make. It's healthcare provider panel, vertically integrated carrier provider.
Which bill was this?
Senate Bill 474
Okay.
and Senate Bill 867. They're exactly the same, except one is more detailed than the others. Because we could not work it out between the two, Senator Barker has a motion, the comment.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Barker.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Senator Peterson's bill dealing with vertically integrated insurance companies and healthcare systems and how they interact with the healthcare systems that are not part of that system. There are some significant issues, as indicated by Senator Spruill. Those issues were not fully worked out. What I would like to do at this point is to make a motion to pass the bill by indefinitely with a letter indicating we need to have a study to be able to make sure that we have fair rules that apply to parties in both situations, both those who have the vertically integrated systems and those who do not, so that we could, the rules and guidelines would be clear to everybody. And so the motion would be that the letter be one to have one of the commissions that we have do a study during the year. Given that JLARC is already sort of overburdened, I think the two other options that are available are the Health Insurance Reform Commission and the Joint Commission on Healthcare. So I would like to have one.
Thank you for that explanation, Senator Barker. The motion is that Senate Bill 474 be passed by indefinitely.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
474 and 867, Madam
And
Chairman.
867, yes. Senator Obenshain.
Yeah, I would, and I know that this motion is likely to pass, but, you know, this is a serious, serious problem, particularly in parts of the state with one provider that is vertically integrated. And, you know, we've passed this by in years past. We've got to deal with it at some point. I think we're missing an opportunity dealing with it this year, but I understand.
Madam Chair.
Senator Spruill.
Question to Senator.
Obenshain.
No, what's?
Peterson. Senator Peterson.
Yes. Madam Chair, then in case to bring one, then would it be, since they are both in his name, could we just we bring back and we pass by 867 and let him hear 474?
I'll do whatever. I'm prepared to present on 474 if y'all want to. 867 was the broader bill. 474 is the skinny version.
Was 474, which is his skinny latte bill.
Skinny latte.
Already has a motion. Senator Spruill.
I'd like to make a motion, we bring 474 back.
Well, you haven't killed it yet, but.
Well,
We haven't voted yet. I'm
Well,
sorry.
we need the makers of the motion to rescind their motions.
Madam Chair,
Senator.
I don't know if this is
Newman.
what Senator Spruill wants or not, but I know there's some rules about letters, but they don't really matter that much. I would make a substitute motion that the bill be carried over, and then I think that the chairman can still write a letter, especially to the Joint Commission, but at least it keeps the subject matter continuing to move forward.
Okay, the new motion is, did we get a rescission on the last motion?
I'll second this.
Okay, all right. The motion is that Senate Bill 474 and Senate Bill 867 be carried over for the year with a letter from the chair to the commission. All in favor of that motion, please so designate on the voting board.
Okay.
I don't even know. I don't know votes.
Finish carrying that motion, Senator.
Yeah.
All righty.
Ayes 11, noes 3,
At least I brought
abstentions
work
1.
with me this whole time, so.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's it for me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk, could you please announce that?
Ayes 11, noes 3, abstentions 1.
Ayes 11, noes 3, extension 1. The bills will be carried over with a letter. Thank you, Senator Peterson.
Okay. You're done. Thank you for the good job done, Senator Spruill. All right, we're going to get to the Health Insurance Subcommittee, and there's 3 bills there. Any one of them which passed, that we got to go. It's got to go to Finance. Senator Barker.
Yes, the subcommittee on health insurance met a while back. We heard the testimony, did take action at that time. We delayed reporting it to the full committee. So the efforts were, because there were discussions that were going on. In the end, we do not have consensus on this. The 3 bills are Senate Bill 172 from Senator Favola, Senate Bill 522 from Senator McDougal, and Senate Bill 767 from myself. Senator McDougal's bill at the subcommittee levels recommended to roll into Senator Favola's,
Wait, you recommended to what on McDougal's?
to roll into Senator Favola's.
Okay,
So we roll into Senator Favola's. So I'll make that motion now.
all right. You've heard the motion to roll 522 into 172. All those in favor of doing that, vote aye.
Aye.
All right. You want to explain briefly the differences between 767 and 172?
Well, Mr. Chair, the subcommittee did recommend reporting Senator Favola's bill on a 2-to-1 vote.
Okay, all right.
The subcommittee did not recommend reporting my bill, which failed on a 1-to-2 vote.
Okay.
Three of us on that subcommittee, so it's a small group. There also, as I'm having conversations with Senator Favola on this, she has a substitute that I think it would be better to her to present her substitute and me to present a substitute that I have. It's just a slight change to my bill, and then have action taken by the full committee.
All right, so the substitute is subsequent to you all recommending that it be reported?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So you didn't vote on the substitute?
That is correct.
But it's a
Okay.
better bill.
All right. You want to go ahead and explain your is there a motion to adopt the substitute to 172?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 172 be adopted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? All right, the substitute's before us. Transmit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. What this substitute does is it not only addresses out-of-network emergency care services, it also addresses out-of-network elective surgeries. The goal here, and I think all of the stakeholders would agree, including the insurance industry, is we want to remove the patient from surprise bills. The only obligation the patient would have under my bill would be to honor whatever deductible or cost-sharing requirement that would be part of that patient's insurance plan. Other than that, the patient would not be responsible for any additional charges that the provider might charge. So the main point of contention is how do you determine what the fair rate might be when you're paying the provider for a charge that's beyond what the patient's insurance plan would cover, because the patient's insurance plan is not in network. And we've come up with, I think, a very reasonable approach. We've worked with many interest groups, including the Virginia Poverty Law Center. The Commonwealth Institute for Fiscal Analysis has been at the table. I worked with the Virginia Health and Hospital Association, and then many specialty provider groups. As we looked at the data, we wanted to get a handle on how large is the problem, how often are people out of network. And we realized that less than 3% of patients really go to an out-of-network emergency provider or an out-of-network elective surgery provider. So it's less than 3%. So this cohort is not going to shift the insurance market by any stretch. But the bill does allow for an opt-in for ERISA plans. That would be your Employment Retirement Income Security Act, the federal ERISA plans. We do allow for an opt-in. So essentially what my bill does is it allows for a number of options. It says that the provider will be offered the first option, the first pay offered would be the usual and customary commercial payment. And that would be the first offer to the provider. If the provider deems that's not acceptable, then the provider contacts the insurance plan of the patient within 90 days. If they can't work it out, and there'll be some incentive to work it out, then it would go into arbitration. So I would ask the commission to look at sort of lines 281 if you are so interested. We set a pretty tight framework for the arbitration. The State Corporation Commission must establish an expedited arbitration process to settle disputes. When there is a gross disparity between the fees charged by the provider and what the patient's insurance plan is prepared to pay, we lay out some criteria. And I have to give credit to the Virginia Poverty Law Center. They did a lot of research to determine what this criteria should be. So they were looking at things like the level of training, education, and experience of the provider's usual charge for comparable services with regard to patients in health benefit plans, the circumstances and complexity of a particular case, the individual patient characteristics, the history of network contracting, and then the market-based value, regional average for commercial payments, and the fair market value. We believe that this framework would result in the fairest way of determining a reimbursement to the provider. Not everybody loves this bill. Nobody loves it, unfortunately. I love it. But besides me, the Virginia Health and Hospital Association and the doctors are willing to accept it. It is not their first choice. The insurance companies will probably don't like it either because it doesn't set just a flat rate. However, in the research I've done, I don't think an arbitrary flat rate is the right way to go, as much as I have a great deal of respect for those representing the insurance industry.
Hold on for a second. Senator Norman.
Yes.
In my deep dark past, when I was foolish enough as attorney to handle domestic cases, generally when everybody left the table unhappy, it was a pretty good decision. Does anybody like this bill?
I like it.
Other than you?
Other than me. The Virginia Poverty Law Center, the Commonwealth Institute for Fiscal Analysis, some data groups that look at health data.
I'm not interested in hearing from the poverty law people yet. I'm having a dialogue with you, please.
The Virginia Health and Hospital Association does not love it, but they like it enough.
Second question, Madam Mr. Chairman. It looked like under that arbitration provision, and I just had the opportunity to read it for the first time, and as you well know, I don't have any area of any knowledge, but I really have a paucity when it comes to this type of thing. Looks like under the arbitration provision that there was some specificity contained in it as to the considerations. I mean, almost a category of considerations. My question, Mr. Chairman, is this something really the General Assembly ought to do, considering, while I might be in the basement when it comes to understanding it, I don't see a wealth of legislative knowledge on establishing criteria. And is this something we ought to be codifying?
I would argue that it is, because we want to ensure that the players understand what the framework is when they go into arbitration, and we also want to ensure that the process is fairly expedited. The Virginia Health and Hospital Center Virginia Health and Hospital Association felt pretty strongly they wanted certain criteria to be articulated, and so did a lot of objective analysts. I think we're better and we can get a more expeditious decision when we establish a framework. So I have determined that perhaps it is the best thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the lady explaining that.
Senator Servell and then Senator Revin.
I have a question for the patron. So what is this arbitration expected to cost per case? Like if just one issue goes, what's the cost going to be?
Of course, I don't know what the cost would be per case. It would depend on, you'd have to look at a number of average cases. I don't have that data, but it would be split between the patient and the provider.
Mr. Chairman, further question. Assuming for the sake of argument, the cost is 10 grand and so each party has to pay 5. What is the incentive to litigate a cost under $5,000 if, say, the split cost is $5,000? I mean, if the arbitration is going to cost 5, then you're going to spend the 5 on arbitration anyway, so you may as well just pay it, right?
The goal here is to not incentivize arbitration. The goal here is to provide arbitration has an option if a settlement can't be reached between the provider and the insurance plan.
Mr. Chairman, further question. So I understand the objective is to avoid arbitration, but it seems to me you're also incentivizing them to just pay anything that's under whatever the arbitration costs, instead of actually paying what the cost should have been, if it should have been a lower cost.
Well, I mean, the cost of arbitration is the cost of arbitration. I don't understand I don't know are you suggesting a mechanism? I'm not following exactly how I necessarily would fix your
No,
issue.
Mr. Chairman, just give me a further question. So for example, say there's some cost that, if the Medicare schedule says it should be like $2,000, but your out-of-network guy wants to charge like $6,000. If the arbitration is going to cost you $5,000, there's hardly a point to arbitrate. You may as well just pay the $5,000 because you're going to pay it anyway, and so that doubles the cost of whatever that cost is. I mean, so just when you introduce this conflict arbitration mechanism, and it just incentivizes everybody to everything that's below that amount to pay more.
My co-patron would like to respond.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Serville, I don't think that's been the case. Arbitration's been used in other states in a similar way, and there's been arbitration when a new payment schedule for out-of-network has been established, which is essentially what we're doing in this bill. There's a little flurry of activity where the two different parties kind of figure out what the average pay is for that particular area, but it has not been a deterrent to having that conversation or to paying or to the insurance companies defending their position. It seems to have been a fairly good way to work that issue out.
Madam Chairman,
And I-
or Mr. Chairman, whoever has the gavel.
This has been tried in New York and Texas.
Can let me just say, it's not often I agree with Senator Serville, but I may have some of the same concerns he's got. I mean, right now, under the American Arbitration Association procedures, they have a small arbitration package under which, if there's a dispute under a certain amount, and I think it's like $5,000, the consumer doesn't pay anything. And I'm just afraid I have some of the same concerns Senator Serville expressed, that consumers just aren't going to be able
I don't think
to
there's anything
economically
in my
afford it.
bill that would prohibit the State Corporation Commission from coming up with that kind of regulatory framework. Go ahead, Scott.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Scott Johnson, to start out, let me answer Senator Norman's question. The factors that the arbiter would look at, on line 289, it talks about relevant factors including, so it's exemplary, not mandatory that they look at all of those. To Senator Obenchain and Senator Sorville's question, this arbitration, and it's probably best by an example, care is provided, I'm the doctor, I'm out of network. The insurance company gets a bill from me and they send me $100. The patient is only going to pay their copay or deductible, so they're out of it. We all want the patient to be out of it. That's one thing everybody in this room agrees on. The question is, I get that $100. I've got to determine, is that the patient's insurance company's usual and customary rate? Is that something that I'm okay with? Under the bill, if you look on line 216, I've got a period of time where I go back to that patient's insurance company. Patient's out of it. I go back and say, insurance company, $100 isn't fair. I need 125, I need 130, I need something. The insurance company can either tell me to pound sand, or they can come back and say, we'll give you 115. But bottom line, if we can't work it out, then the next level of opportunity is an arbitration process where I would go to the State Corporation Commission and say, provider and insurance company, you've got to get together, have an arbiter appointed, and figure out what that right number is. I want to clarify, in some states like New York, they use baseball-style arbitration. That is not in Senator Favola's bill. Baseball arbitration means somebody gives a number, somebody else gives a number, and the arbiter has to pick one of those two numbers. In Senator Favola's bill is traditional arbitration, meaning the arbiter hears all of the evidence, looks at all of the facts, and he or she will pick the number they like. They're not locked into the initial offers. So I just want to make that, stress that point.
Scott, the reason I was asking about those various categories and the consideration of them, because there's quite a few there, and actually I was moving in the direction of Senator Servile's question. You offer the example of $100 that is in dispute. How in the world are people going to be able to afford going to arbitration on these smaller claims unless they can be an aggregation, almost like a class action. Is that provided for in the bill?
Yep,
Can they
yes.
aggregate them all?
You can, Mr. Chairman, and let me flip you over there. The bundling on line 307, paragraph E, a party shall be permitted to bundle claims involving a single healthcare carrier. So if I was out of network and I gave that same care to 15 patients, then I could bundle when I asked the SEC to
Mr.
look at
Chairman,
it.
I read the line. I just think it's important that people hear that because it hadn't been emphasized.
You're correct, and my apologies for not doing so.
All right, Senator Evans.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if there's a fiscal impact to the state plan under this bill.
The fiscal impact was indeterminate. The state plans do cover, they're pretty generous and do cover many provider plans, but the word we got back was it was indeterminate. I did put in a budget amendment, and I think I put it in for about the same amount that Senator Barker put his in for, which was, I think, 200,000.
So it's your position that all state employees of the state plan will be covered under this?
Yes, yes, and they actually, there was a group that met for the past 3 years that discussed these issues, and data was provided that indicated there would be minimal impact on a state plan.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, Senator Eben, if you look on line 225, that's where the applicability of the state employees. And the evidence that was heard over the summer of all of our state employees, of all the thousands of claims, there was approximately 127 non-emergency or emergency claims by out-of-network providers. 127 out of thousands. So the magnitude was extremely small.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Evans.
I'm trying to find out, who does the paying for the arbitrator? How does that work?
The SCC would contract out with an arbitrator, and that's where the cost would be split
Split between the
with the
parties.
provider and the insurance.
All right, any other questions? Is there anybody opposed to this bill? All right, hold on. We got the representative from the insurance industry.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Doug Gray on behalf of the Virginia Association of Health Plans, AFL-CIO, the ERISA Industry Committee, the Virginia Breast Cancer Foundation, the Virginia Association of Health Plans, the Virginia Association of Health Underwriters, Virginia's private colleges, the Independent Insurance Agents of Virginia, the Virginia Food Industry Association, and the Virginia Bankers Association. We are opposed to this legislation. This legislation has some serious problems. What it does do is say it basically includes 3 different definitions for what should be paid. And then it says you pay the usual and customary amount and doesn't define what that is. So it kind of, leaves it up in the air a little. You could choose what your negotiated rate was in theory, but then they call it the initial payment. Now, the word initial is kind of important here. Why would you say initial payment?
Senator Norman has a question.
Doug, help me, and I'm not being facetious here. What are the consequences, if any, if we don't pass either one of these bills?
Well, if we don't pass either bill, people will continue to be balance billed. It doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, it can be very expensive in an emergency and also in a schedule situation.
Thank you.
In regard to the initial payment, the reason it says initial payment is because this is a provider-oriented bill that says, all right, whatever you pay me is going to be initial. And if I desire more payment, then I will go straight to arbitration. If the arbitration costs a significant amount each time we do it, every claim that is below the cost of arbitration will immediately be paid. It's not a workable system. It's in essence saying you're going to pay whatever they ask for. That's why it says initial payment. When they go to arbitration, you're going to do it. And why would you pay the cost of arbitration if the claim was lower? You wouldn't. And there's plenty of evidence from other places that have gone to arbitration. Their initial starting fee is $2,650 before you pay the arbitrators. And the arbitrator's hourly fee if you're using 3 of them, could run $1,000 an hour. So this is not a small, insignificant amount. In other states, like North Carolina, New York, in 2015, they started with 207 ER claims. By 2017, they had 645. In the non-emergency, they had 36 in 2015. In 2017, they had 451. In Texas, they started with 45 claims the first year, 600 the second year. 4 years later, they have 4,000 claims and such a big backlog that nothing can get resolved. So if you are a consumer, you're basically going to get hit with a premium increase. That's what this is doing. So all this bill really does is move the patient out of the middle and put them right back in it when they pay their premium. That's what the bill does. I would also point out to you, as has been mentioned earlier, that the conditions that start on line 289 include everything but the kitchen sink. I mean, there are 9 of them. Well, I'm sorry, there are 7 now. The bundling of claims is in there. All 3 formulas are in there. The history of the network contracting is in there. The circumstances and complexity of the case, the experience of the provider, their level of training, whether there's an amount of difference between what the plan pays and what their full charges are. The bottom line is this is set up to increase costs dramatically. And the problem for the people we represent in this coalition, including the people in the state health plan, is you're going to have a big increased bill as a result of it. And that's why it's not a workable idea.
Senator O'Shea.
Just real quickly, I don't, Doug, don't go anywhere. Not that I think all of your concerns can be addressed, but let me ask you about this. The factors that you complain about in Section D, would you be happier if it said all relevant factors which may include rather than which shall include?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Obenshain.
Less unhappy?
The arbitration is really not workable in this context with that list of factors. Whether it's may or shall, it's in the realm of reality, and so that means we'll still be stuck with a situation which all of those things can be considered. Okay. I mean, in other words, when you...
That's all right. I wouldn't offer it.
Well, I understand. Let me help you guys focus a little bit.
There's more than 5 minutes on this. Let's wrap it up.
All right. There's three different payment mechanisms in there. None of them are chosen for the initial payment. All of them can be chosen for the arbitration. That's the problem.
Senator Norman.
Before you leave, and once again, I apologize for my ignorance in this, but you make some reference about premiums. This legislation was not in effect either Senator Favola's offering or Senator Barker's offering, but premiums still went up for other economic factors last year. Did they not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, next. I'll try to make it brief because we've got so many bills left.
Yes. Well, I will be brief, Senator and members of the committee. One reason that Labor opposes Senator Favola's bill, we are in favor of Senator Barker's bill, is because the majority of Labor's health fund plans are self-insured. So therefore, that's our concern in terms of our self-insured insurance plans. Thank you.
Next.
Self-insured would be exempt. Okay. Yeah. But the opt-in for ERISA plans.
And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Robert Barata here today on behalf of America's Health Insurance Plans. Very briefly, we favor Senator Barker's bill over this bill because Senator Barker's bill actually keeps the cost of health care from rising, and then those ERISA companies will opt in to Senator Barker's bill, but under Senator Favola's, they will not. So you'll have about 80% of Virginians still being balanced bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jill Hankin from the Poverty Law Center. I am in support of Senator Favola's bill. Please realize this debate has gone on for years. And the two sides, the health insurance plans and the providers, the doctors and hospitals, have not been able to agree on a benchmark. They have not been able to agree on a single defined payment that would get the consumer out of the middle of this problem. These are all insured consumers. They pay for their insurance, yet they go to an emergency room or they have elective surgery and they end up with a huge bill because to their surprise, they got some treatment from an out-of-network provider. So the frustration with this over 3 years has been great, but still today, the consumers are being charged as we speak. The providers don't like Senator Barker's benchmark because it's from the health plans and it's actually lower than what was proposed last year. They want a carrier-specific benchmark. They just want to pay their in-network payment, period. The providers would rather have a look at more regional averages of what other insurance plans pay, not just the single insurance company, but what other insurance plans in the community pay.
All right, let's hear Senator, sure, go ahead.
Well, and I do want to point out on line 305 that the arbitrator would consider, these are magic words here on line 305, the market-based value, that's the benchmark the health plans liked. The regional average for commercial payment, that's the benchmark that the hospitals and providers liked. And the fair market value is what the hospitals wanted. And all these terms are defined in the bill. And look, these guys will not come together on an agreement, but consumers can't wait any longer for some relief. So let an arbitrator look at all of this and make a decision. It's being used in other states. We need to move forward on this issue. Thank you.
Okay. What I'd like to do now is hear from Senator Barker's, and then we'll take a vote on each of the bills. Senator Barker, as quickly as possible, explain the difference.
They dig up all the time, so.
Yeah, no, I know that, but, we've heard a lot about your bill already.
Right.
So go ahead.
Mr. Chair, there is a substitute.
adopt
Mine
the
is actually
substitute.
a very small, two small changes made to the bill.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of substitute of 767, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the substitute's before us. Transmit.
All right, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, one of the things that Senator Norman mentioned earlier was maybe if nobody likes it, it's a good thing. In my bill, what you already heard from Doug Gray, is there are a wide variety of organizations that like this bill, think it would be beneficial to the broader community, and oppose her bill. So I think there's value to having that looked at here rather than just saying nobody likes it, at least somebody likes our bill. So, but we'll move forward on things. There are clear implications in moving forward with Senator Favola's bill in reality compared to mine. My bill basically would set up a process whereby there would be, as was referenced by a couple of people, the opportunity to look at the payment rates made for that particular service by the plan that's affected by this. One of the things that would do is to ensure that you're not end up with a payment rate that is far higher than what that plan pays for their in-network providers. What we don't want to do is, in effect, give providers an incentive to drop out of the plans or to not enroll in the plans because they can make more money on a surprise bill than they could on just if they're in-network providers there. So I think there's extraordinary benefit to the approach that we've taken there, and that would actually result in lower costs being incurred there and help deal with the situation and not have the disincentive to come into the network that Senator Favola's bill has. That would actually be an incentive that would exist there. The number of people, the percentage of people who have a surprise bill is relatively small, as people have acknowledged. I think smaller than sometimes we perceive from what we've been hearing on things, but it is relatively small, the number to get there. But there are significant implications to even this small number and what the ripple effects would be by the processes that would be set up. And the fiscal impact statement that was drawn up for Senator Favola's bill talked about how Aon, which is a consultant to the State Corporation Commission, is part of the work group that had been talked about last year. When they did analysis, they actually figured there would be a larger cost increase to the public from a ripple effect that would drive up in-network providers, the payments to in-network providers, than there would be for even just paying the cost of the surprise billing for the out-of-network, and that it easily could be up to $7 million per year that would be incurred there. So there is a significant impact in terms of cost impact. This fiscal impact statement on my bill did not provide any of that information, did not provide any of that conclusion, because the payment system that we've set up in our bill would actually work better. What also would help is that with my bill 767, is that you would have, in effect, a much larger consumer base that would be built into it. What the ERISA plans, which actually cover more than 3 million Virginians, have there, and there's also some MEWAs and other types of plans that would be affected here. What they have said is that they like my bill very clearly and are opposed to Senator Favola's. If my bill becomes the process, they would encourage their member companies to enroll in that. If it does not, their recommendation would be not to enroll because of the higher cost and also the extraordinary uncertainty as it relates to the arbitration system. And what they stated was in written communication was that the ERISA plans urge legislators to enact reasonable, market-based benchmark solutions like that envisioned in Senate Bill 767 and oppose legislation mandating inflationary rates that do not reflect a fair market value will increase costs for both patients and plan sponsors, like the provisions in Senate Bill 172 and others. So the plan that we put forward is one that is market-based.
Okay.
It's tied to what each plan, each health insurance plan, what they paid are already paying. We have put in a sunset so that if after a couple of years we would be able to look at what their experience has been. The sunset is specific to not to the full bill, but to the provisions in terms of how you determine the rates that are paid there. And finally, I would say that the situation we have as it relates to the arbitration system, and in reality, I think that by putting arbitration into the substitute, the risks and potential negative impacts of Senator Favola's bill are even greater than what they were with the original bill. What I would hope is that we would be able to move forward to do this. New York, there have already been a lot of concern expressed, both in terms of the volume of cases going to arbitration, but also the rates that have been set in many of those. In Texas, they've been a shorter period of time that they've been operating there, and there's already an extraordinarily long delay of a year or more to be able to just get through the arbitration process. So it does not seem to me to make sense to be able to do that there. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. One final thing is that reference was made to the usual, customary, and reasonable provisions in Senator Favola's bill. However, that term is not defined in the bill, and as best I can tell, is not defined anywhere in the code. It's sort of a floating number that's out there. There's no way to be able to calculate what that is. There's nothing that's straightforward on that. And what it would do is drive up the expenditures that would be made, the costs that would be incurred, and what the time period would be for getting a lot of this resolved. So,
all right, first Senator Marsden, then Senator Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Barker, directing your attention to line 178 through 180. It may just be an error in the edit, but it takes you up to the words cost sharing, and then there's no punctuation mark and no further. I was just wondering if something was left off or.
The cost sharing that's talked about there is the consumer would still pay their responsibilities under their plan related to deductibles and coinsurance. So that's the cost sharing that would be incurred. I don't know if there's a.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, is that just the way that's worded? It just there's no punctuation mark after sharing, and then it goes all the way down, I believe, until the sentence on 183. It looks like there were just a couple of words left off, or.
Okay.
There shouldn't be a line through it. It should end with in network.
Oh.
Mr. Chair, I think it's the problem with the copier.
Yeah. Yes.
Because after cost sharing requirement on 180, it picks up cannot exceed the cost sharing requirement that would apply if such services were provided in network, period. So that line that's running through 181 is just a copier error.
It's just an editing
error. So
okay.
It should be a period after network on 181.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have any questions, just maybe a comment on where we are. One, I tend to think that Senator Barker's bill as a vehicle makes more sense, although I think that on line 233, we still have got work to do on whether or not 125 is the right number. I'm not convinced that 125 is the right number. I do believe that if we move to arbitration, and while I respect what the unions are saying, if you give ERISA companies the right to opt in or opt out, they're not going to opt in. They're not going to opt in because it's going to cost them more money. They're not going to do it if we go under the Favola bill. And I'm just concerned that you're going to end up with an opt-in that's not going to solve the problem. So, Mr. Chairman, I hope we can continue to look at line 233, but I would hope that we would very strongly look at the Barker bill.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a lot of people here who want to speak in favor of my bill, or at least just stand up and say they're in favor.
Yeah, that's what I would prefer, and what we're going to do is we'll vote first on your bill and then on Senator Barker's bill. If you like Senator Barker's bill, you wouldn't vote for Senator Favola's and vice versa.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I'm co-patron with Senator Favola, and I would like to clarify some of the issues that have come up, if I may.
Sure.
This issue on surprise billing is what opened the can of worms to have a discussion about this section of the code. Surprise billing is an evolution that happened as the medical marketplace attempted to adapt to the Affordable Care Act, and there were more people that were employed, physicians that worked in groups, and were then that physician organization was employed by a hospital. As you have heard, the frequency with which physician groups are outside of network is incredibly rare, and it is usually resolved within a few months of time. But if you look at any other marketplace, in order to have a mutually agreeable decision, both sides have to have something, power with which they can negotiate. When physicians opt into a plan as a participating physician, they accept a lower reimbursement rate for the services they provide. Physicians never get paid what their prices are, and we haven't for decades. But they accept a lower reimbursement because in-network is supposed to confer volume to their bottom line. When you go out of network, the reimbursement is obviously more because you're out of network and it's a little closer to your fee. This is the only negotiating tool that is left in the medical marketplace. If you accept Senator Barker's bill, which is much admired by the health plans because it's great for their bottom line, you are taking away the only free market negotiating tool your physicians have to have a say in how things happen in the marketplace. People do not get paid. If you look at what is reimbursed for Medicare or Medicaid, Senator Barker is proposing that physicians be reimbursed 125% of that amount. You all know from having heard people talk about it for a long time that all hospitals and all doctors lose money on Medicaid and Medicare. 125% of those numbers is less than the in-network reimbursement. You're removing physicians' ability to negotiate. Consensus could not be reached. So let me just be clear. There was a formula that was used to determine what was paid for out-of-network physicians in the past. In the process of fixing these groups maybe being in and out of network, that entire formula for reimbursement has been called into question. And that is a secondary aspect of solving the surprise billing for your patients. And what you see are two entities vying for how that is going to be negotiated. Senator Barker's bill is going to have the unintended consequence of disrupting the availability of physicians and providers in Virginia because it's going to remove that one negotiating tool. Okay. I ask you to please see the nuances of this bill and to support Senator Favola's bill. Arbitration is where we could get so that these two entities who are never going to agree in the legislature have a means by which they can agree in the marketplace. But you are harming the future of medicine if you support the lower reimbursement rate on Senator Barker's bill, and I ask you to support Senator Favola's.
All right, Senator Favola's bill is an amendment in the nature of a substitute. Did we add any more amendments, Tom? That we did not. Is before us. Is there a motion? This is Senator Favola's bill.
Do I have, may my supporters just stand up and say?
All right. I've seen it.
And a couple
Right.
physicians are in the audience.
All right.
I recommend the bill be reported.
A second.
All right, there's a motion and a second that Senate Bill 172 as a amendment in the nature of substitute be reported. What? And re-refer to Senate Finance. Both bills would have to go if they're reported. All those in favor vote aye, those opposed nay.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
Okay?
Reports.
It's reported and referred to Senate Finance. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Senator Barker's bill is now before us.
Move to report.
There's a motion and a second to report Senator Barker's bill. It's a substitute, right? Yeah, it's a substitute. All those in favor of reporting SB 767 in the form of a substitute and referring to finance, vote aye. Those opposed, nay.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Well, the war continues. All right, okay. Both of those bills have to go to finance. All right. Okay. All right. Insurance. All right. Senator Edwards, Senate Bill 250. Senator Edwards, Senate Bill 250. Let's try to move them along, okay? All right.
Mr. Chair,
Tell us
Senate
what
Bill
your bill
250, we
does.
have a substitute, we have a line amendment or a substitute. What we've done here, Senate Bill 250, this bill would require that Medicare supplemental policies be offered to people aged 62 to 65.
Yeah.
You're entitled to Medicare if you're disabled at 62, age 62, and of course Medicare kicks in at 65 if you wish to take it. And what this bill, the amendment does, was to take out one of the provisions that was problematic, that insurers and insurance agents shall be prohibited from charging or receiving a commission fee or other compensation except for $25 for any policy or certificate issued pursuant to this section. So that's what this amendment does, so I move the amendment.
Pardon?
I move the amendment to take out that provision
Okay.
regarding limiting the amount of
All right, you've heard the
pay
amendment.
that
All those in
the
favor,
agents can
It's
get.
been seconded. Vote aye.
Aye.
Are opposed? All right, 250 is amended. Go ahead, Senator Edwards.
Mr. Chairman, this is very needed. We do not have right now in most of Virginia, 90% of Virginia, Medigap insurance or Medicare supplemental policies for people who in this category, age 62 to 65, and is
Who are disabled.
greatly needed. And so I believe we have an agreement here, but I'll let anybody speak in favor or against the bill.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay,
Robert Barat on behalf of Anthem. Yes, we do.
okay.
Bob Bradshaw, Independent Insurance Agents, we support the bill.
Okay.
Jill Hankin, Virginia Poverty Law Center, we do support the bill.
Okay.
It will help a lot of
Any
disabled
opposition? All right, the bill's before us. All right, it's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 250 be reported. All those in favor vote aye. Opposed, nay. All right,
Ayes 15, no 0.
bill is reported. All right, Senator Barker, you have 280. You heard, what did we do with 474?
I took it up. Yeah, we cut over.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 280 is dealing with the issue of mental health parity. There have been some attempts to tackle this issue in the last few years. There was a language built into the budget about 3-4 years ago, that asked for reports on this. The problem is that in many instances, families with mental health services cannot obtain access to those services through their insurance plan, in that the number of providers who are enrolled is very limited. What you have now is a large number of mental health providers, psychiatrists, psychologists, and others who are practicing in the area, but they no longer participate with the insurance plans. It's not a Virginia situation, it's actually a national situation. In reality, because of the reimbursement system we have, that's largely what's created this problem. The reimbursement system is the rates that are paid by commercial insurers are generally a little bit higher than the rates paid by Medicare, but they do not differ widely from that in most situations. And what has happened is that there are certain services that a lot of the providers make substantial profits on. There are others that are sort of break even. And then there are some that are significant losers, and this is one of the ones where they are losers. So what this would do is try to move us along in terms of being able to address this issue and to get all the information from JLARC and others to be able to make sense out of this situation and move us forward in the right way, so that there is network access across the board on things.
Okay. Any questions of the paper? All right, those in support, just quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Hickman on behalf of the Psychiatric Society of Virginia. We strongly support the bill. It's an important first step in looking at mental health parity, network adequacy, and coverage so we can better understand how our healthcare system is working for all Virginians. We thank Senator Barker, and we urge you to support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Doug Gray, on behalf of the Virginia Association of Health Plans, we're supportive of this effort. We really have a huge shortage, and the challenge is after someone comes out and starts their practice, they get enough patients, they just go straight to cash because there's way more demand than there is supply. And so we need to really figure out what we're going to do, and this is one way to get started on the data.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Mindy Carlin on behalf of the Virginia Association of Community-Based Providers. We support this bill and urge affirmative action to move it forward. Thank you.
All right. Okay, is there any opposition? All right, the bill's before us. That's Senate Bill 280.
Move the report.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, reported. All those in favor vote aye, opposed nay. All right.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, 280 is reported. Senator Barker, while you got the microphone, 765 and then do 766 and then 1031.
All right. On 765, what I'd ask is that that bill be carried over for the year.
All right, you've heard the motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to carry over 765 for the year. All those in favor vote aye. Opposed nay. All right, that is carried over. 765 is carried over. 766, and if that's reported, it has to go to finance.
All right. There is a substitute for that.
All right, we're going to
So
get
I
the
would move
substitute.
the adoption of the substitute.
All right, there's a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This is an issue that was studied during the year by the Joint Commission on Healthcare on explanation of benefits which are mailed out to the individuals who receive services. There clearly were some issues that were raised there as it related to privacy concerns, particularly when it was a family situation and the services received by a family member who was not the policyholder, were then sent to the policyholder. So that there are these types of issues that are there. And it also includes a carve out or to eliminate requirement for Medicaid for getting an explanation of benefits because that's not common there because there's not a payment from the Medicaid recipient. So those are the two sort of the issues that we dealt with in the Joint Commission on Healthcare. Okay, you've heard the substitute. Those in support, quickly.
All right, health plans are in support. Any opposition? All right, the bill's before. All right, there's been a motion
Second.
and a second to report 766 as an amendment in the nature of a substitute. And that's got to go to finance.
Yes, sir.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or vote aye. Opposed, nay. All right, bill's reported. All right, Senator Barker, you have, that was 766, you have 1031.
1031 is sort of a last step in the path that we've been on for several years, dealing with a mandated coverage of autism spectrum services. Initially, it was the limited by age, and now what the limitation that is there is a limitation by the size of the employer, so that the group plans, if they're large group market, they are covered by this mandate. What this would do is make it cover, this coverage provide the small group market and the individual plans, so that all would be part of this process.
Senator Barker, usually these go to her, don't they?
Well, in many instances they have. What this is doing is, this is not a policy change in terms of what services are covered. The services that are covered are going to be the same ones that have been covered. It's just that they've been covered for the large group markets, so the larger employers, but not for the small group and individual markets. And what this would do is just expand that.
Okay.
So it's a little different from where we're looking at
Tom, I don't think you have.
new coverage.
Yeah, okay. All right, any questions by the committee of the patron? All right, those, and we're going to limit the time, put it in 5 minutes.
We
Okay.
had the.
That's not per person, that's total.
Yeah.
Okay?
Was
All
there
right,
an amendment on that
welcome.
Thank you. And I'll be brief.
Okay,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah,
Five.
we do have, I think, one amendment, line amendment.
All right,
Mr. Chairman, Senator Barker, line 101, it says January 1st, 2020. That should read
line what?
101. Beginning of the line, it reads January 1st, 2020. It should read January 1st, 2021, so the bill is not retroactive.
You've heard the
Move the
amendment.
amendment. Second.
All right, all those in favor of adopting the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
Accepted. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judith Rossetti, Director of State Government Affairs at Autism Speaks. I so appreciate your consideration today. I want to address some concerns in the bill that are listed in the fiscal impact statement. One is HERC, whether or not the bill should be sent to HERC. As Senator Barker explained, this is just an extension of the benefit to the small group and individual market, just that final piece. The others around cost. There's no cost to state employees. There's no cost there at all. Those groups are already covered. There was mention about essential health benefits and whether this would be an expansion of essential health benefits and trigger a potential defrayal cost. It is not an expansion of essential health benefits. Autism spectrum disorder is defined in the DSM. It's a mental health issue. Treatments are mental health treatments, and so they are essential health benefits. Since 2011, when ACA passed, there have been 11 states that have extended this coverage to marketplace plans, qualified, non-qualified health plans, individual markets. And there's states like Michigan, Delaware, Oregon, Washington, South Dakota, Hawaii, Ohio, Idaho, North Dakota, Wyoming, Tennessee. That question has been asked and answered, so we're good there. We also have been through JLARC, and so we have been studied, and cost is minimal. So 86 cents per member per month, 0.03% of health insurance premiums, according to reports to the SCC. So minimal impact. And now we have some folks who want to talk to you about essential health benefits for them, how essential it is to their families.
Okay.
Thanks.
Next. You got 3 minutes and 20 seconds total for the group.
My name is Ian Dixon. I'm a self-employed father of 2 from Charlottesville. Last month, my 3-year-old daughter was diagnosed with autism. Like any family with life-changing diagnosis, we scrambled to learn the treatment plan for our daughter, the financial implications, and when you think you have all of that figured out, you learn that the Gold plan, for which you pay almost $1,500 a month, is exempt from covering treatment for children with autism, including the ABA therapy prescribed for my daughter, despite the concrete evidence that exists regarding the life-changing nature of this therapy and the early intervention for young children. We were absolutely stunned to learn that this treatment is not covered by our plan. A lack of coverage means we cannot begin treatment for our daughter. I would like to read a very brief portion of the rejection letter that we received from our insurer. Recently, you or your provider asked us to review a request for the service listed above, and the request has not been approved. We'd like to explain why. The services excluded are not covered under your plan benefits. The noted services for applied behavioral analysis is not a benefit covered under your member benefit agreement, and therefore is excluded from coverage. This review was a benefit review. It is not about treatment. The review looked at the benefit. If there are no benefits, there is no coverage for service. Fully insured small group plans do not have to follow the Virginia mandate.
Sir, you're running. There are other people
Very good.
behind
I ask that you support this bill.
you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
so much. Appreciate you being here. Yes, sir, welcome.
Yeah, right here. Hello, my name is Mark LaBelle. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Like the ABA, it helps kids who have autism. They needs ABA. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Mark Lobell, Senior, and Mark Lobell III, we ask you for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you, fella, for coming here. Next.
Hello, Senators. Kate Fletcher. I have 3 boys with autism spectrum disorder. None of them are high functioning. They need ABA. It's our lifeline, and every family deserves the same opportunity. Thank you.
Gary Fletcher, father of 3 boys on the autism, and I want you to support this bill. Thank you.
My name is Christy Vanko. I am the Administrative Director for the Virginia Association for Behavior Analysts, and I'm also a parent of a child with autism who's received these services, and we urge you to please pass this bill. Thank you.
Becky Bowers-Lanier, Mr. Chairman, with CA Human Services Organization. I could never say it as well as Mark said it earlier. We urge you to support the bill.
Thank you. Welcome, Teresa.
Good afternoon. Teresa Champion with the Virginia Autism Project. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nicole Riley with NFIB, representing 6,000 small business owners. When this was passed almost 10 years ago, it was with the understanding that it would not apply to the small and individual markets because of the concerns of cost. And I would say that we still have those concerns, and that's why we would like to see it go to HERC. It has been over 10 years since this has been looked at, and we believe that at this point there have been changes. At that time, 10 years ago or so, there was a cap on age. There was a cap on and those kinds of things, to which now there isn't. So we do have those serious concerns about what it could cost, and for those reasons, we would ask you to at least send it to HERC for one more look at. Thank you.
Next.
Julie Blauvelt with the State Corporation Commission Bureau of Insurance. I'm not in opposition to the bill, so I'm just looking to make sure I'm not taking up anybody's time. We don't take a position on this, but I just did want to clarify that, yes, this issue has been looked at through the Health Insurance Reform Commission. That was only in the large group market. So at that point, when you're looking at the large group market, it is not part of essential health benefits. This would be dealing with the individual and small group market, where you're looking at whether it's in addition to essential health benefits, which currently is specifically excluded from the benchmark plan right now. So communications that we've had with CMS indicate that it's possible that the state would need to pay carriers the portion of the premium that this bill would cost. Right. Also, there is a section at the end of this code, or this section that's being amended, a subsection that indicates that it will not be applicable to, if it is determined that it is above the essential health benefit, that it won't be applicable to those plans that are on the exchange. So individual and small group.
Bill's before us.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 1031, that's just substitute.
The amendment.
Just amendment.
Amendment.
With amendment be reported. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, nay.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. 1031 is reported. 10:40, all right, let's go back. Senator McClellan, you've been patiently sitting here forever. This isn't as controversial as the last one, is it?
No.
Good.
I actually have three. Do you want me to do all
Okay,
three of them?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I do have someone who wants to testify on one of them, so I'll do that one first. Senate Bill 718.
Mr. Chairman,
Senate Bill 718. Senator Sproul.
you had, I know, I hate to say this for Jennifer, she's been waiting a long time, but you had two that been sitting there, when Jennifer was doing her first bill, those two been sitting there for a long time. You bringing them back up, and they've been sitting there for a long time. You wave your hand, that's up to you, brother, I'm trying to help you out.
How about we do 718, and then I'll defer to them. I just want to
Okay.
let this young
Okay,
lady
if you
leave.
wish.
All right.
718, everybody pay attention.
718 provides that no group insurance carrier shall require prior authorization for the interhospital transfer of a newborn experiencing a life-threatening emergency or condition, or the hospitalized mother of such a newborn to accompany her infant. This was brought at the request of a constituent who is here. She gave birth to twins prematurely. One was transferred to another hospital that had a NICU, and she had to get pre-authorization to transfer with them. By the time she got there, her son died. While this did occur in Connecticut, she now lives here and has been working to get this legislation passed in a number of states. And VHHA did agree that this was an issue that could come up here in Virginia. But I want to go ahead and let Deborah Parker testify because she's been waiting the whole time.
Oh, needed,
Oh.
yeah, the substitute.
Yeah, sorry.
Move that the substitute be adopted. All right, all those in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
All right, substitutes before us, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Slaslaw, members of the committee. My name is Deborah Parker. I am the mother of William and Kerrigan, twins who were born at 26 weeks 4 years ago on December 23rd, while visiting family for the Christmas holiday in Connecticut. I come to you today in support of Senate Bill 718, Health Insurance Access for a Mother to Same Facility as Her Newborn. This bill is more than a bill to my family and I. This bill prevents what happened to us 4 years ago from hopefully ever happening to another family. When my children were born, they came quick and unexpected. I ended up delivering at a small community hospital that did not have the means necessary to care for such sick newborns. While my twins were delivered and quickly transferred to a hospital that was capable of caring for critically ill 26-weekers, my husband and I discovered that getting me with my children would not be so easy. At the time in Connecticut, much as it is here in Virginia, if a mother has private medical insurance, that insurance company requires prior authorization before mom is transferred. That authorization, in our case, never came. Being the Christmas holiday, our insurance company told my husband to call back on Monday. Knowing we did not have until Monday, both hospitals, the one I delivered at and the one that my children were fighting for their lives at, continued to reach out to our insurance company with no success. Everyone involved in our case was waiting for a Christmas miracle. Unfortunately, our Christmas miracle never came. On Christmas Day, roughly 30 hours after being born, my son, William Daniel, lost his fight to stay alive. He passed away never knowing the touch of his mother's finger. He passed never hearing her voice or feeling her warm kiss. He passed before I, his mother, could see him, before I could whisper an I love you to him, and before I could see him take a breath, all because an insurance company did not grant the required prior authorization. You, the committee members of this esteemed committee, have the ability to continue to take the right step and take the insurance companies out of this decision-making process. In 2016, 5 months after losing William, Connecticut took this step. They passed William's Law, taking the decision of transferring a mother with her critically ill newborn out of the hands of the insurance companies and placing it back where it belongs, with a mother and her doctor. If a Medicaid mother can go almost immediately with her newborn, the same should be for the mother who has private medical insurance. It is up to you to make your own history and have Virginia become the second state in our union to get mom with her baby as quickly as possible. Research shows that critically ill babies do best when mom is with them as soon as possible. By eliminating this mandate of required authorization, mom can be by her child's side as soon as she is stable enough to make the journey. This bill still allows insurance companies to get paid. All I'm asking is that you allow mom to go with her baby without prior authorization. What happened to my family is every family's worst fear. William would have passed no matter if I had gotten to the neonatal intensive care hospital or not. What makes his death tragic is the fact that an insurance company prevented me from meeting my son while he was still alive, all because they required prior authorization for me to be moved from one hospital to another. This bill will hopefully prevent another mother from experiencing the same outcome that I did, having to say goodbye before I even could say hello. Thank you for your time, and I ask that you vote in favor of keeping moms and babies together.
All right.
And this is my son.
Thank you so much. All right, anyone in opposition?
Move the report.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 718, is that an amendment?
It's a substitute.
Substitute.
Mr. Chairman, question.
Substitute. All right, that
Question.
it be reported and.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Sproul.
Okay, Doug, could you ask a question for me, please?
Yes.
Doug, not you. On a different type subject, if a person were in a hospital that had, let's say, a heart problem, and for example, I have to get authorization from my doctor to go from one place to another. If a person was in a hospital that do not have the need that the family think they should have, do they have to get permission if the insurance company does not provide a permit to go to the other hospital? Do we have to get permission to do that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. In an emergency, there isn't prior authorization involved. The doctor makes a decision and they move, period. So I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. I mean,
I'm saying that in a not emergency, and not in that situation, I'm saying that when my insurance, for example, said that I know I can go to this hospital, but it does not happen to go to the other hospital. And when that particular case, the children was transferred to this hospital that my insurance does not cover. So now I'm saying that I want to be, as a female, for example, I want to be with my children that my insurance does not cover. My insurance covered this hospital where I am. That's where the children were born, in this hospital. But because something happened, they have to move them to another hospital. So now, but my plan does not cover me to go to the other hospital.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Sproul, this is not a coverage question. This is an administrative question from another state. It hasn't happened here. I think the hope of the sponsor and the proponents is that it never happens. I mean, that's basically what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any opposition to the bill? All right, 718 as a substitute is before us. All those, is there a motion?
Move report.
It's been moved and seconded that 718 as a substitute be reported. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, nay. All right, the bill is reported. The vote, Hobie?
And I'd be happy to defer.
That's 15-0.
I'll be happy to wait for the other.
Okay. Next will be Senator Hashmi.
Come on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. This is SB 966, and I believe we have a substitute.
Move the substitute.
Oh, you need to take this. Because I think I've got a conflict, so I will not be participating.
Is there a motion to agree to the substitute?
Move the substitute.
It's been moved and properly seconded that the substitute be agreed to. All in favor, say aye. Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. SB 966 addresses the issue of flavored nicotine vapor products, especially seeks to address the concern that we have among the use of e-cigarettes and vaping products with high school students and even younger students. FDA research indicates that high school students have begun to use vaping products and e-cigarettes in very high numbers, and that figure has actually doubled nationally between 2017 and 2019. A major cause of this increased use is because there are flavors now available, such as cotton candy, mango, fruit, and coconut, which seeks to entice the young consumers and makes it seem that these products are benign. But as we know, these products are not benign. They lead to nicotine addiction, which in turn leads to greater use of cigarettes later in life. The substitute that you have in front of you does allow for the continued use of flavors such as menthol and tobacco flavors. And additionally, it allows the use of flavored nicotine vapor products that have now been approved by the U.S. FDA. It does seek to establish a Class 4 misdemeanor for selling flavored nicotine vapor products, but it does make it clear that menthol and tobacco-flavored nicotine are legal, and the substitute also makes it clear that selling Newports or other menthol cigarettes is also continued legally.
You've heard the presentation by the patron. Are there questions by members of the committee? Senator Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was reading the substitute, and Senator, on line 19, what is an ordinary consumer?
An ordinary consumer. What do you think?
Madam Chairman, my question is, it's
Senator
rather
Norman.
subjective.
I think it is subjective, and I think that the idea.
Subjective is not good when you're putting a criminal
Well,
attachment to it.
I will say, if you look prior to that on line 19, other than the taste of tobacco or menthol, and we know the other kinds of flavors that are there. If you wanted to be more precise, we could add a word or two without any additives other than tobacco or menthol flavoring, no flavoring additives, if that would be more comfortable.
Senator Norman.
I'm not going to rewrite the bill. I'm just suggesting you may want to look at that very carefully because you have added the Class 4 misdemeanor to it, which is criminalizing it. And this is a very subjective basis on which you're.
Right, rather than rewrite it now, we could adjust it for the floor if that's the committee's liking to pass it.
Questions by any other member of the committee? Senator Newman.
Madam Chairman, what's the difference between this and what the FDA has already done?
The FDA last week approved certain things for closed systems. This is about open systems, and also, you see, there's a loophole around this. They did it for systems that were not disposable. So I'll just read you from the New York Times. A footnote on page 9 of the new policy from the FDA permits all flavors to be sold in devices that cannot be refilled and are designed to be disposed of after the flavored nicotine has run dry. So teenagers have caught on fast. Quote, students were telling me that everyone had gone to puff bars, which are disposable. I don't know what they are. And students were telling one principal that the other ones were so yesterday that they've moved on, and the teacher or the principal said teens are very savvy, and if they're addicted, they're going to do what it takes to continue a habit that is now plaguing their lives. So there are other ways they're getting these flavors beyond what the FDA had contemplated.
Senator Norman, you still in queue? Other members of the committee have questions?
Madam Chair.
Senator Bell.
Quick question. These products are currently illegal for minors?
They're not, they're under the FDA ruling, they're except for closed, what they call closed systems are illegal that are refillable, but they're not illegal in the something called open systems, and refillable pods.
The jewels.
But jewels are not, they do not, it's not legal for them to be in jewels, or jewels doesn't have them. So they're not.
Senator Bell?
Madam Chair, I guess I'm still a little confused. Are these products legal or not legal for minors? Vaping products?
They're not legal in closed systems under the FDA's ruling from January 7th, except for tobacco and menthol in closed systems like Juuls. There's something called an open system, which they are legal in.
Madam Chair, I might be
Senator
somebody,
Bell?
phone a friend here, because my understanding, these are illegal for minors already.
Madam Chair and Senator Bell, yes, all products are illegal to minors. You have to be at least 21 nationwide to purchase any of these products, open systems or closed.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator Heisling?
Move the report, Madam Chair.
Second.
I'll second with the understanding they're going to fix that little tweaker there.
It has been moved and second that the bill be reported as with the substitute. All in favor of that motion, please record aye on or nay on the electronic voting board. Thank you. Bill is reported. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Clerk.
Ayes 7, noes 6.
Ayes 7, noes 6, the bill is reported.
Thank you.
Can you record me?
Just telling you. Hey, Kobe, put me Senate Rule 36.
Yes.
Okay. Hobie, put me Senate.
Mr. Clerk, could you announce the revised vote with Senator Saslaw?
Ready?
Ayes 8, noes 6. Abstentions 1.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Pillion, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman Sasslaw, members of the committee. Before you is Senate Bill 846 that deals with organ transplants and disability discrimination. Last September, the National Council on Disability recommended that the states adopt laws prohibiting disability-based discrimination in the organ transplantation process because there's been so many documented cases, but organ transplant discrimination toward patients that had those disabilities like autism and Down syndrome. This came to me before from a mother in my community that had a child with Down syndrome and couldn't imagine her child not getting an eye or a lung or liver or heart because her child had Down syndrome. This bill prohibits providers from placing a person with a disability at a lower spot on the transplant list because of their disability. It prohibits insurers from refusing to cover transplant services solely because of disability and requires providers to consider an individual support system in their evaluation. This bill does not require insurance companies to cover a new procedure or cover medically inappropriate transplants. And it's my understanding the Bureau of Insurance does not see this as a mandate. And I do have Charlotte, who's been waiting since 2 o'clock to talk to you guys. And if you would be so kind as to let her speak to you, that would be greatly appreciated.
Welcome, Charlotte.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Woodward. I was born on December 18th, 1989. When I was born, not only was I diagnosed with Down syndrome, I was also diagnosed with a congenital heart disorder. The atrioventricular canal structure of my heart didn't form correctly, so my doctors performed open heart surgery when I was a baby to fix it. This was at a time when people with disabilities, including those with Down syndrome, weren't always treated equally like the rest of society. For instance, some babies and children were denied surgical heart repairs into the 1990s solely because of their diagnosis of Down syndrome. I had 2 other open heart surgeries when I was a baby. One to try to fix my mitral valve, and one to implant an artificial mitral valve. With my artificial mitral valve, I was able to grow and learn, and I excelled in school. I had my 4th open heart surgery when I was 10 years old and needed a larger artificial mitral valve. All went well, and we hoped that would be my final surgery. However, as time went by, I started to exhibit telltale signs that my heart needed more help. I began to collapse after any physical exertion. My doctors determined that there was nothing else they could do surgically. My only option was a new heart. After being on the transplant waiting list for only 11 days, on January 30th, 2012, I ended up having a life-saving heart transplant. I am very grateful for my organ donor, who is a remarkable young woman whose kind and generous act saved my life. After recovering in the hospital for 11 days, I returned home and have been doing very well ever since. I am a college student majoring in sociology, and I have a wonderful job at the National Down Syndrome Society. My official job title is Community Outreach Associate, but I also work with the Inclusive Health and Wellness Program, the DS Works Employment Program, National Buddy Walk Program, and the Charity Racing Program. I'm also involved with NDSS events, the NDSS 2020 Adult Summit, the Inclusive Education Program, and the National Advocacy and Public Policy Program. Not only do I engage with all the many NDSS program departments, I also lobby the U.S. Congress. The bills I love advocating for are the Transformation into Competitive Employment Act, the Marriage Access for People with Special Abilities, or MAPSA Act, the Disability Employment Incentive Act, the Disability Integration Act, the Higher Education Act reauthorization, and of course the Anti-Organ Transplantation Discrimination Bill. I'm also the editor-in-chief of a magazine called Our Voices, which is for self-advocates by self-advocates. I want to point out that because of all these things, the reason why I'm able to do this stuff is because I was given the opportunity to have a life-saving heart transplant. At the National Down Syndrome Society, which is the leading human rights organization for people with Down syndrome, we believe that organ transplantation is a fundamental human right. California, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts, Oregon, Delaware, Kansas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Washington, Louisiana, and Indiana already have laws preventing organ transplantation discrimination. Our secret to getting states to implement the Anti-Organ Transplantation Discrimination Act are action alerts, social media posts, etc. Although it is common for people with Down syndrome to have heart disorders, it is rare for them to be offered the opportunity to receive organ transplants because of continuing discrimination based on their disability diagnosis. I am hoping to change that. It is against the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Affordable Care Act for people with disabilities to be discriminated against. By sharing my story, I hope to inspire you and to encourage you to join my campaign to end organ transplantation discrimination. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to sign up with her.
Amen. I think she's the secret weapon. Yeah.
Is there any, I assume, is Is there any opposition?
You got to be kidding me.
If anyone comes up here, I'll be glad to offer.
Move report.
All right, you got a motion before us on Senate Bill 846. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that 846 be reported. Is that finance? No. Okay, all those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, nay. The bill is reported 15-0.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
All right. All right. Senator McClellan. All right, okay. Well, we're on labor and employment bills. So the 804.
I got one of those.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we'll do him after Senator McClellan.
All right, I have Senate Bill 804, and I have a substitute.
As well. Okay, go ahead, Senator.
I have a substitute for Senate Bill 804. As originally introduced, 804 was an omnibus domestic workers' bill of rights that would have extended the same protections that other employees have to domestic workers. That's a little more complicated than I expected it to be. And so what the substitute does now is simply remove the exemption from the minimum wage for domestic workers and request the Secretary of Commerce to convene a working group to look at the other worker protections to make recommendations how or if those protections can be
So the bill
extended.
essentially is a study now.
It is, with one exception. It removes the exemption from the minimum wage for domestic workers. Everything else is now going to be a study.
Second. All right, the substitute is now before us. There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the substitute is before us. You've all heard the bill. Questions of the paper? All right, anyone, all those in support of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Alexis Rogers. I'm the State Director for Care in Action. We are an advocacy organization for 60,000 domestic workers here in Virginia. We support the bill. We are proud that it's going to move forward to eliminate the exemption when it comes to minimum wage, and look forward to working with the senator and others to make sure that other worker protections can extend to domestic workers as well. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. My name's Aubrey Batten. I'm manager for a company called Well Paid Maids. We're a living wage home cleaning company here in Virginia. All of our employees make a living wage of at least $17 an hour, and they have access to benefits including health, vision, dental, short-term disability insurance, workers' comp, and 22 paid days off a year. We offer these generous benefits because we know they're good for our employees and they're good for our bottom line as well. The lack of equal protection for domestic workers baffles me. Domestic work is still work. Bills are bills, and injuries are as common as they are in manufacturing or in any other line of work. Just last week, we had a cleaner hit her head at a job. She's likely got a concussion, and because of the coverage that she's got through these benefits, we're able to support her. So I'm told my time is short here, so suffice it to say, I support this bill, and so does my company.
All right.
Thank you.
Opposition? All right, bill's before us.
Move report.
Second.
All right, it's 804 as a substitute. It's been moved and seconded. The bill be reported. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Toby?
That's all.
Oh. Looking at that.
Ayes 14, no zero, one abstention.
Do you want me to do my last one?
Is it a long one?
No.
All right.
I'm not aware of any
Go
opposition.
ahead, and Senator Morrissey, you're up next.
All right. Senate Bill 720 would basically provide that the public safety answering points be provided training for their dispatchers to give instructions in Sorry about that.
I'll move the
Telecommunications.
All right, it's been moved and second substitute be accepted.
Yeah.
Be adopted. All those in favor say aye. All right, the substitute for 720 is before us.
Sorry, I had to find what my acronym stood for.
You what?
I had to find what my acronym stood for. It would provide that PSAP operators receive training in telecommunications CPR, which is basically giving instruction to someone on the phone on how to do CPR until emergency services can arrive. Most PSAPs already do this. This would have DCJR do training instructions, and that's basically the bill that was brought by the request of the American Heart Association.
Okay, any questions of the patron? All right. Those in favor of the bill want to stand? Any opposition? All right, bill's before us as a substitute. All right, the motion, and I need a second.
Second.
Second to report Senate Bill 720 as a substitute. All those in favor vote aye. Opposed, nay.
Thank you.
You're done.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here on Senate Bill 812.
812 and 822.
812 and 822.
Kind of.
I'm going to move to remove one of them from the docket, 822. They're identical bills. I'm not quite sure how that developed.
Right, okay. There's a motion to pass by indefinitely Senate Bill 822. All those in favor vote aye.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Mr. Chairman, this bill deals, 812 deals with those annoying and incessant unsolicited telephone calls. They deal with everything. It's a robocall, or it is a person that's dialing from a call center. Normally, it's a call center, and mostly those call centers tend to be and are trending to be overseas call centers. But you've all received them, sometimes 6 or 7 a day. It's an insurance call, health insurance call, an automobile insurance call, or Senator Saslaw, it's calling to ask if you want to refinance your student loans. They come from everywhere, all times of the day or night. This bill does 4 things. Number 1, it requires that a telephone solicitor immediately disclose who he's calling and who he is and what property or good is being offered. Number 2, the bill prohibits spoofing. Most folks are familiar with spoofing it's when somebody identifies themselves as somebody else, or now it's becoming a different location. For example, if Senator Eben was trying to call Senator Bell and Senator Bell was ignoring him, Senator Eben can put in a spoof, and he can say it's Senator Saslaw, and that's what would come up on the screen. Senator Bell would say, yes, Senator Saslaw, and it's Senator Eben trying to talk to him. That's spoofing. But now you can also spoof the address and the telephone number, so it appears that it's an 804 Virginia number. This bill would prohibit that. It also would prohibit the solicitor from making a call to anybody who's on the Virginia do not call registry. And lastly, the measure requires that the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Affairs set up by January 2021 a do not call registry. That's it, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and if you have any questions, I'll try to address them.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Gage.
Frequently, we get calls from 804, 698 numbers, and we pick them up, and of course, that's this exchange, and they're from somewhere else, and they want to sell something. Is that what this is designed to prevent?
It's one of the things, yes. And usually, at that call center is another sister state or becoming far more likely another country. And here's what's happening. If a call center from India is making the calls, or from Bangladesh, or from South Adelaide, South Australia, you really have no recourse to go after them. None at all, and they know that, and that's why the calls are being made. This bill prohibits that. And so if you see an 804 number you know it's coming from Virginia.
But, Mr. Chair, if the calls are being made from India or Australia, this bill won't have any effect on those calls, will it?
It will, because this bill, the second measure prohibits the spoofing, and the spoofing includes not only a different name of the caller, but a different telephone number. So while that call is coming from an Adelaide address telephone number, which is 161, it's actually showing 804. You pick up the phone, and you're expecting a Virginia caller. You're not getting that.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Senator Edwards.
I had that happen to me a few months ago. I got a call from a company in Maryland, and I don't know where they're coming from, but they hacked into my computer and everything. It was a mess. I know what you mean.
I've talked to some people, Senator Edwards, that said they get 6, 7, 8 calls a day.
Okay. Let me ask a question. Is there anyone opposed to this bill?
Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 201, which does pretty much the same thing that Senator Morris's, well, something similar.
Okay.
So we might want to,
You want to merge yours into his? Or,
if it's going to pass, yes.
all right. If there's no opposition and it still doesn't pass, you really got a problem, Senator. All right. So you want to make the motion to merge yours in?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that Senate Bill 201 be merged into Senator Morris's Bill 812.
812. All right, it's been moved and seconded that the 201 be merged into 812. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Okay, the bill all right. All right, there's a motion to report and re-refer to finance. All those in favor of reporting and the incorporated bill and referring it to finance, vote aye. All opposed, vote no.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
15-0.
Question to you, sir. Why does this have to go to finance?
They requested it. They requested it. That, okay? I'm not getting a note. All right, anyways, that they requested it, I sent it up. I don't need a war with my seatmate, okay?
All right. Thank you very much. You all have a good evening.
All right, Senator Deeds, you're up.
And I'll just do it from here if that's all right, Mr. Chair.
That's fine.
1047, it's a narrow bill about narrow narrow market. It simply prohibits healthcare from offering more than one narrow network plan, and that's defined in the bill in a geographic area. If any two narrow network plans offered by the health carrier would have the two lowest monthly premiums of any silver level plan offered by the health carrier in the geographic region. And the reason for this is because the second lowest, I think, is the one that affects the subsidies. What's happened in the Charlottesville area is one insurance company did offer the two, they offered two narrow network silver plans, and that reduced the subsidies available to people on the Affordable Care Act. Under the Affordable Care Act, I've got some people here from Charlottesville who can talk to this bill much more intelligently than I can. Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yes, sir, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Carl Quist. I'm a business owner from Charlottesville. I'm also one of the co-founders of Charlottesville for Reasonable Health Insurance, a consumer group of over 1,000 members in Central Virginia. SB 1047 prevents Virginians in the individual market from being forced into narrow network plans that limit their access to a tiny sliver of available health providers in a market. SB 1047 maximizes consumer choice and affordability with zero fiscal impact. This year, we're seeing rates skyrocket for the 90% of people in the individual market who receive a federal premium subsidy. SB 1047 will prevent this from happening again in your districts. Federal law establishes premium subsidies based on the formula tied to the second cheapest silver plan available on the healthcare exchange. This year, the subsidy rate was determined in our market based on a single insurer who introduced two inexpensive yet very narrow plans in addition to their more expensive plans. As a result, most subsidized consumers in our market faced a difficult choice between choosing an affordable health insurance plan that excluded 85% of the providers in our market, or choosing a broad plan similar to the one that their family had for 2019, but paying several $100s more for that plan. SB 1047 simply limits the ability for a single insurer to manipulate the federal subsidy level by submitting multiple silver level on-exchange narrow network plans. At least one of its two cheapest silver plans must be a broader network plan. Thank you for supporting SB 1047.
Hello. I'm speaking in support of this. My name is Dave Berzonsky. I'm a working musician, teacher, and business owner in Charlottesville. I'm here today to express my support for SB 1047. I'm hoping you will support this law. Last year, I had insurance for my wife and I through Anthem. The cost of the premium was $145 a month. When I went online to renew my plan this year, I was dismayed to find out that the same plan was going to be $411 a month. After several confusing phone calls with agents from Anthem, I realized the increase in my cost was not due to a premium increase from Anthem, but rather a subsidy reduction as a result of Optum introducing two narrow network plans into the market and capturing the subsidy benchmark. Since I could not afford a 250% increase in my premiums, I felt forced to go with Optima, and I'm not happy about this. The first time I attempted to use my new policy was to get a refill on some prescription eardrops, which were $15 under Anthem and are $40 under Optima. As a result of this, I'm very concerned that there await many expensive surprises in my current coverage. And as a parent of children with specific medical needs, I am very concerned that in these plans, I will be caught in unforeseen coverage gaps. In fact, if my epileptic daughter were to begin to have seizures again, I am not at all assured that there would be adequate in-network coverage for her. I feel that narrow network plans could be a lower cost option for those who choose them, not forced on consumers by capturing the subsidy rate benchmark. I would also like to add that I understand that it is my responsibility to understand the terms of the insurance that I buy, but as a very busy parent and business owner, it would be very helpful to have insurance with terms that do not change wildly every year. For this reason, I support SB 1047, and I hope that you will too. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jill Hankin from the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We also support this bill, and the two gentlemen before me have described what the problem is by allowing one company to have two of these small, two narrow networks together. It really artificially changes the dynamics of the marketplace.
Okay. Is there any opposition to this? All right, come forward, please, quickly state your opposition.
Ben Dendy, representing Centera and Optima. I want to present Dennis Mathis, the president of Optima Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Dennis Mathis, and I'm the president of Optima Healthcare. Today, I stand in opposition of Senate Bill 1047. As a local Virginia-based organization with deep roots and experience serving patients across the Commonwealth, Optum has been dedicated to providing high-quality, affordable health care. We thank Senator Deeds for his commitment to serving Virginians and his efforts to ensure quality health care. That's a critical goal that we both share. However, today I'm here to express serious concerns about this legislation and the potential harm and impacts on consumer choice and affordability. Optima strives to improve affordability by offering plans for every type of member we serve. In order to do this, we use strategies that make sure that we are offering the adequate networks across the state. According to Modern Healthcare, among the plans on healthcare.gov, and so that's where Virginia participates in the individual market, 72% of the plans offered in 2019 were narrow network plans. On average, these plans were 18% less expensive than more broad network plans. The same can be said in Virginia. The silver narrow network plans we offer in Charlottesville are 15% less expensive and can be the difference. Okay, sir. Then bottom line is, this is a bad piece of legislation. It will limit insurers' ability to offer narrow networks, which was the crux of the ACA when it was founded. And this bill focused on Charlottesville is going to have an unintended consequence across the entire state of Virginia.
I have a question or two. Is Optima owned by Centera?
Yes, sir, it is.
And is Centera a, quote, nonprofit hospital?
Yes, it is.
And do they have north of $2 billion in assets?
I believe they do, yes.
Then explain to me why this gentleman standing behind you, why his policy went up so dramatically in a period of 1 year.
If you give me a chance, I'm happy to do that, Senator. So
Just give me a succinct answer.
we have to file our rates in blind to all the other carriers in the marketplace. And so we actually try to get the lowest priced products that we can in the marketplace, which we did this year. We actually have the 4 lowest priced silver products in Charlottesville. We don't know what the competition's going to do until the curtain gets raised, and then the subsidies are determined after that. And so we had no idea when we filed our rates whether or not we would be the benchmark plan in Charlottesville or anywhere else for that matter. That is determined after the fact, after all carriers file their rates. So there was no manipulation. It was our attempt to get to the lowest priced products, which in fact, we do offer the lowest priced products in the marketplace today.
Thank you.
Senator Lee.
But you agree that the second lowest price silver plan is what sets the benchmark for the marketplace.
That's the way the ACA was designed, Senator. That's
And
correct.
so by having the 2 lowest priced, you're able to manipulate the rate.
Manipulation suggests that we knew in advance of what the outcome was, and that's not the case.
Mr. Chair, Centera owns Martha Jefferson Hospital, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And further, in your network, or out of your network, is UVA Hospital, is that right? They're not in your network.
They are in some of our products, but not in the products that we're talking about today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bills before us. Quickly.
Mr. Chairman, Doug Gray on behalf of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. Competition is what we're looking for. And if you inhibit competition, you're going to hurt the ability to get lower prices in different markets.
But
commercial plans who are not integrated also offer skinny products. So this isn't just related to an integrated plan. A skinny product is, and a narrow network is the best way to deliver savings. And that's what the feds are looking for in the exchange. Thank you.
All right, bills before
Move
us.
to report.
There's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 1047. All those in favor vote aye. Okay, opposed, no.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Bills are reported. All right, you want to take over? I'm going to, we're on labor and employment. We've done Senate or House 7, so I'm up next. The first bill is Senate Bill 426. It's called Fair Share, and I'll try to.
Senate Bill 426.
And
Give your attention to Senator Saslaw, please.
I think there's been multiple versions of this. Tom, is it?
Madam Chair, Senator Saslaw, I have a couple of amendments. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Can I get a motion on the amendments?
Well, let me present this and try to move. What the Fair Share deals with is a situation, and it doesn't do away with the right to work law, puts a dent in it. I'll be the first to, I don't want to be intellectually dishonest. Don't say anything, Senator Obenstein. But anyway, but it doesn't do away with it. what it deals with is, the average monthly union dues run somewhere, depending on the union, between $39 a month and $52 a month. And for the sake of the, discussion, we'll say it's 50, okay? And anywhere is depending on the union from 50% of those dues to 68% is to hire the outside people, lawyers, accountants, and that, who during the course of the contract negotiated the contract, got everything done, and the people who are non-union are benefiting from that. And what this would do is say, well, you got to pay that proportion of the bill that is connected with the what got you your pay and your benefits. And let's just suppose, there's two types of situations. One is where a company has less non-union employees than union, and the other is where they have more. Let's deal with the situation where they have less, and just quickly, let's say that the monthly dues is $50 a month, and 60, and in my bill it says you'll pay 60% of that. So that would come to $30. If you had, let's say you had less than 5,000, you would pay less than, a company had less non-union than union, you'd pay the $30. And let's say if that union, because of them, they were getting $30 an hour, there's 173 hours in a work month, so 1 hour they'd be giving up. And this would be something that the employer would either pay and subtract it from the employee or whatever. Let's take the situation where you have more non-union and union. Let's say a company B has 5,000 non-union, 2,500 union. In that situation, the example I just gave, the 60% would still be of the $50 an hour would still be $30. But because there's more than 2,500 union, there's more non-union than there are union. Let's say they have 5,000, it would be a windfall into the union's treasury that they shouldn't have to, that shouldn't happen. So what you would do with 5,000 employees, let's say 2,500 times $50 a month, times $30 a month is $75,000 a month. You would divide that over the 5,000 employees, or approximately $15. They would, in that case, that example, they would pay $15 a month. And if they were earning $30 an hour, it's 1/2 hour out of their pay out of the 173 hours. So, I put the bill in because, all I've heard from the business community, which I'm a part of, is there's no such thing as a free lunch unless you work for a non-union company.
We have a question. Senator Norman, please.
Non-union. Yes.
Madam Chairman, excuse me for interrupting you, Senator Sasslaw. I tend to be pragmatic. And as I see all these people standing up out here, they can wax their eloquence for their respective
They're
positions.
all in favor of it.
But I don't just expect, I know with absolute certainty it's not going to change the persuasion of anybody on here. So I am going to preemptively make a motion to pass the bill by indefinitely, and not for the reasons that you would expect.
And I will second that, Madam Chairman.
Okay. But let me explain the reason.
Senator Norman.
Madam Chairman. I recall that following the November elections that the governor stated there was going to be a new Virginia. And Senator Sasslaw, you know me better than some, and I'm a pragmatist. This is business, not personal with me at all. But with legislation that is moving through the General Assembly, I think there's going to be a significant realignment of the Virginia business community. And I don't say that derogatorily. Sure. I just say it as an objective evaluation. I have been concerned about the velocity with which the legislation has been moving, and I really think it would be appropriate for the General Assembly and Virginia to pause and just take a deep breath for the balance of this year so that we could really measure the aggregated impact of all of these individual bills that we've passed. We're passing a lot of bills, but nobody is looking at the aggregated or the combined impact them on the business community or on organized labor. And I just think that we really ought to pause, and that this would be a good bill to pause on, and let's see how Virginia's business economy shakes out over the next year. So that's the basis and the true explanation for the reason I'm making that motion, sir. Perhaps Madam Chairman wants
What's the
put
motion?
hands up to pass it by
Well,
indefinitely.
we had a motion and a second already, but before we move that motion, I'd like to hear from Senator Newman.
Well, Madam Chair, I got to admit, I couldn't say any better. I mean, I've got a lot to say, and I'm sure others do
Oh,
too,
Lord,
but I think
please don't
Senator
talk.
Norman did a great job.
Madam Chair.
Senator Serval.
I mean, I kind of have a sense of where this is going, appreciation of it, but it just seems to me that if we're about to do it, I'm curious if there's anybody that's going to speak in favor of it besides Senator Saslow.
Well, I'd like
Doesn't
to
look
see a
like it.
show of hands of everybody in the audience who was in favor of Senator Saslaw's Senate Bill 426. Doesn't
Three.
seem to be many. Those opposed, please show hand. Then you've heard the motion to pass by the bill indefinitely. Did you say indefinitely? The motion is that the bill be passed by indefinitely. All in favor of that
Madam
motion?
Madam Chair,
Senator Bell.
the only suggestion I'd make is that we pass it by and a letter and have some sort of study to Senator Norman's point, because there are a lot of unknown things. I'm not sure who would be the best person to study it, but frankly, I think if we're going to look at this in the future, the more information we have would be better.
Madam Chair.
I don't accept that as a friendly motion.
Senator Obenchain.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I will vote to pass this by not because we're doing too much too fast, but I think this is a colossally awful idea. We are doing things very right in Virginia. I do not know why we want to turn around and run away from everything that we've done to make Virginia the #1 state in America to do business in. And this would set us on a course to be running pretty damn fast.
Madam Chair, move the pending question.
I just need to say, first of all, I think it would be in our best interest not to send a letter, but rather establish a subcommittee of Commerce and Labor to study this measure.
Move the pending question, Madam Chair.
The motion is
You got a question?
that the bill be PBI'd and that the Committee on Commerce and Labor establish a subcommittee to study the issue. Can we get a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and properly second. All in favor of the motion, please designate on the voting board aye or nay. The bill will be passed by indefinitely, Senator Saslaw, and since it's your committee, you will establish a subcommittee to study this issue.
I can hardly wait.
Senator
Okay. Let's, I've got 427, but let me do the other one, I think it's 486, misclassification, not 486. Hold on.
Give your attention to Senator Saslaw.
It is
On Senate Bill
894.
894.
Misclassification. And this is an administration bill. All my friends are leaving. Okay, this authorizes an individual who's not been properly classified as an employee to bring civil action for damages against his employer for failing to properly classify the employee if the employer had knowledge of the individual's misclassification. Let me tell you just one that I'm personally familiar with. One of the two well-known package overnight delivery services, a few years ago, this came up, and it got resolved finally, but the employee was driving their truck with their name on it, wearing their uniform with their name on it, and yet they tried to tell us that this employee was an independent contractor. And, you know, I mean, I was born last night, late at night, but not last night. And nobody believed that, and ultimately it got resolved, I think, the other way. But what this would do, the court may award damages in the amount of the wages, salaries, and employee benefits, including expenses incurred by the employee that would have otherwise been covered by insurance or other compensation. So it's, and unless the employer can show that the individual is an independent contractor as determined by the IRS guidelines, they would be in violation, for doing this, and they'd be liable for the damages as a result.
Questions of the patron? Senator Newman?
Senator Saslaw,
Sure.
if you had someone like FedEx who has FedEx Green and regular FedEx, and one side is 1099, they have the uniform, they look like they're employees, what's the effect of this on that?
Well, if they're, let me tell you, if you're driving their truck wearing their uniform, okay, and working the hours they tell you to work, you're not an independent contractor, and I don't care what they call it.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Senator Newman?
That's not exactly what they do. They have FedEx Green, which are independent contractors, and then you have the FedEx Red that are not. The FedEx Greens are everywhere in Virginia, and they are independent contractors that have a contract to deliver. The same is true with Amazon. Amazon's got the exact same thing.
If it complies with, as long as they meet the IRS guidelines, they're fine. If they don't meet the IRS guidelines, then they're liable.
Senator Newman?
That's what it says.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Searle?
Speaking of the patron's point, I guess, whether they're wearing a uniform or not doesn't have anything to do with it. It's not a very good example. The IRS has a 20-factor test they look at to determine whether somebody's classified correctly. Every cab driver I've ever seen is an independent contractor, and they drive around a cab that's marked yellow cab or whatever. So it's much more complicated than the uniform they're wearing. So, but in any event, it's a good bill.
They're working on it.
It's a good idea, but it's a horrible example.
But generally, they're working on commission.
Okay.
And that's a totally different situation.
Senator Saslaw?
It's like a real estate agent, really. They're independent contractors. When you're working on a commission, Senator Servell, that's totally different.
Senator Obenshain?
Madam Chair, if Senator Servell likes it, it must have an attorney's fees provision in it.
If there isn't, it'll be one.
Senator Saslaw, you want to wrap it up?
Yes, and there may be, I don't know if anybody's opposed to it, but I think the administration has somebody here to speak in favor of it if you want.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. I'm Megan Healy, Governor Northam's Chief Workforce Advisor. This is part of our misclassification package. We've been studying this for a year with a task force. Our first bill that's crossed over is around tax. The IRS, looking at that as a definition, the tax, the debarment, and civil penalties. This one's a cause of action, and then we've also seen through this committee the retaliation misclassification. So thank you.
Anyone present want to speak in opposition to the bill? Senator Saslaw, can you wrap it up?
I would move that the bill be whoops, here we go.
I'm sorry. Just one concern. Nicole Riley with NFIB. We do appreciate that a lot of these misclassification bills have been dealing with the IRS guidelines. That, for us, from the business community, is good. The only concern that we have about this particular bill is that this is kind of being discussed in a vacuum when it comes to private cause of action bills. You have been looking at 5 to 6 different bills that have private cause of action, and that just concerns us that we're taking these sort of individually, not looking at them cumulative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam
Senator
Chair?
Saslaw?
I just wanted to, point out there was a study from the administration that dealt with all these bills before. They were not considered in a vacuum. They were taken up as the recommendations were given and with a work group that included a bunch of representatives. So it's not like these are just coming up randomly.
Thank you, Senator Evans. Senator Saslaw, you ready to wrap it up now?
It's wrapped up.
It's been moved. Second, that the bill be reported. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 894, please register on the electronic voting board. Senator Saslaw, you need to vote out there?
I did.
Okay, it's up. Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Ayes 12, noes 3. The bill is reported. Senator Saslaw, do you have another bill?
Just one more.
Okay.
That's 427. It's an employee protection bill. It prohibits an employer from discharging or taking retaliatory action or otherwise discriminating against an employee solely on the basis that that employee has filed for or has been issued an emergency protective order or preliminary order against the employer or another employee of such employer. The bill establishes administrative process for the employee that believes he's been discharged or discriminated against in violation of such prohibition.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Senator Serval.
question for the patron.
Yes.
So the way I read this, you can't discriminate or discharge, retaliate if a protective order's been issued. What if the preliminary protective order or the emergency protective order was totally bogus?
Well, you're a lawyer. If the protective, well, generally you have a hearing.
Right, but the
Before,
way that I read
before it's issued.
Further
Is
question.
that correct?
Senator Serval.
When you have a hearing?
No.
So
no,
they issue it without a
no.
hearing?
The two orders that you have listed here are orders that are issued without a contested hearing. They're issued solely on the allegations of one person,
Well, I guess they could be fired for doing something like that.
not under your bill.
Well, yeah.
This prohibits them
if
from
it
being
was
fired.
If it was bogus, they would be.
Madam Chairman.
Well, you want to
Senator
add the
Serval?
language?
Can I ask counsel, does counsel read it that way? Because the way I read it, you could go get a bogus order against somebody, lie about them, get an order entered, and then the thing is thrown out and the employer can't fire him. Is that the way this reads?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, the language is solely on the basis, so I understand what Senator Serval's saying, and I think it probably would be problematic, but, and I'm not sure the language of solely on the basis saves it, but there is some problem with it.
Right. That's how I read it. This needs to be cleaned up.
Senator Saslaw, do you have any recommendation for how to deal with this bill until it gets
Well,
cleaned up?
if it's got some of the problems, then carry it over.
It's been moved and properly seconded that the bill be carried over. Are we saying carried over for the day, the week, or the year?
For the year.
Okay, the bill will be carried over for the year without, well, let's get a motion on that. All in favor of the bill being carried over for the year, please designate on the electronic voting board. Mr. Clerk.
Ayes 12, noes 2.
Ayes 12, noes 2. The bill is carried over.
All right. Okay. We're down to, we've done these, Saslaw. Yeah, no, okay. So, all right, Senate Bill 33, that would be you, Senator Serval.
Could you move substitute?
You know.
Senator Saslaw, there's a motion on the substitute.
All right, there's substitute before us for Senate Bill 33 as a motion, and a second that the amendment nature of substitute for Senate Bill 33 be adopted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the substitute is before us.
Ready to go?
All right, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for those of you who were on Commerce and Labor last year and the year before that, you all saw this bill and with one change. The bill before you deals with consumer finance companies, and it's of the species of Senator Locke's bill, which this committee previously approved. It basically re-regulates consumer finance licenses and puts a 36% rate cap on them. The substitute before you, in addition to dealing with consumer finance companies, basically brings in online lenders and says they're subject to a 36% rate cap. So the bill without the substitute was the one that was approved, I think, unanimously by this committee about 2 or 3 years ago. Last year, it didn't get out of committee. In any event, it basically re-regulates consumer finance industry. And just for To remind everybody what that means, these are companies that this Consumer Finance Act has been around since, I think, 1918. We're talking about companies like Mariner Finance, Lenmark, Regional Finance, Atlantic Financial Service, Franklin Finance, Bynum Finance, One Main, those types of groups. The bill also increases the late fee that consumer finance companies are allowed to charge, raises their loan processing fee, prohibits co-location with payday lenders and car title lenders, which was a problem. If you like, the reason I held it back was I wanted to see what happened with Senator Locke's bill. And if Senator Locke's bill passes tomorrow, I think it's on the floor tomorrow, if her bill passes tomorrow, I would strike this bill. But if her bill doesn't pass, no, I can't strike it yet. I was hoping we would have voted on that by now, but this bill basically puts a 36% rate cap on consumer finance loans, and the consumer finance industry is here, and they're asking for this bill. But the online lenders don't like it because it brings them into a 36% rate cap, which is something we already passed a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator
I'm
Dees?
looking at line 277. Your loans can go as high as $35,000?
Yes. And I would tell you, Mr. Chairman, in response to the concerned look on Senator Deeds' face, these companies typically don't, the legitimate consumer finance companies, I will say, the ones that have been doing this for years, they don't make loans at high interest rates. They typically make loans to people with like 600-plus credit scores, and they haven't been abusing this. There were other companies that were coming in and using their license and using the unregulated product and making loans at like 200-some% using their license. That all ended about 3 years ago after Chairman Saslaw and Senator Wagner sent them a letter and asked them to quit co-locating and making these loans. So, but yes, it does that.
Mr. Chairman, it just concerned me to see legitimizing a $35,000 loan at 36% interest.
I'll be glad to address that.
Mr. Smith says he can deal with that.
Once we got out of the
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jeff Smith, representing Virginia Financial Services Association. The association has been around as long as the industry. We have been deregulated on loans above $2,500 since the mid to late 90s. Up to that point, it has been regulated at 36% and less. Our members do credit checks, employment verifications. We underwrite these loans. So when a customer completes a payback, their credit rating is better. What we came into was a situation of where other lenders were trying to take advantage of our deregulated 2,500 and up. There was no ceiling, no loan ceiling on our loans. What this bill does is re-implement the 36% cap on all consumer finance loans and reestablishes a new loan ceiling of $35,000. I would respectfully suggest, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest to Delegate Deeds' question that if we did make a $25,000, $30,000 loan, it's going to be at the 3 and 4% interest rate.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that
Okay.
a week or a month?
I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I have a question, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, a question of you and Senator Servell.
Scott?
And I really don't know the answer to this.
Answering
There-
questions.
As I look on the docket, there's Senate Bill 855, which Senator Lewis had previously presented and we resurrected. How do these two bills conflict or comport?
Let me answer that. I can answer that, Mr. Chairman.
I can't do it. I'll let him go
And I
first.
know that the senator can handle it as well.
But I believe you.
Part of the study that took place in 2017 at the Bureau of Financial Institution was to implement some modernization to the antiquated 1918.
Tell me, are they in conflict or are they in?
They're not in conflict because of the basis that you've got a situation of where the internet lending piece has been added, brand new, into the Consumer Finance Act. So up to that point, we haven't been able to make internet loans as a licensed finance company. So now, should this Bill 33 pass, then a licensed consumer finance company
I understand.
can make a brick and mortar loan and can make an internet loan,
Jeff, I understand.
but it's 35%, 36%.
Let me just also say, I don't think there's a technical conflict, but I think there's a policy conflict.
Okay, and I want to announce at 6 o'clock, we're going to finish up, and whatever bills are left, we'll finish tomorrow. Okay, and anyone, we've heard the support, any opposition? All right, Nicole, come up here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nicole Brenner with Reed Smith on behalf of the online lenders. Just seeing the substitute for the first time, but speaking to what Senator Suravel had said, understand that the existing consumer finance companies do serve the population that has a 600-plus credit score. We tend to serve those with a sub-600 credit score. That's the majority of our customers who are subprime, not near prime. We don't usually do the increased late payment fees that Senator Suravel said are in this bill, or the ancillary products. Those are not our business model, and we prefer not to do those kinds of fees. Would ask that if we're keeping this vehicle alive, that you take online out of it. There was a bill previously that came out of a BFI stakeholder process that would have added online to consumer finance. We supported that bill. Don't support this bill.
Okay. All right. Any amendments or anything? The bill's before us.
Like I said, I'll strike it if her bill passes tomorrow.
All right. Do I hear anything?
Move to report.
There's a motion and a second to report. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, nay.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Bill is reported. Is the Senator, I got to get Lewis, let me do Lewis because that's got to get to finance. Senator Lewis? And Senator Edwards, you may get to you till tomorrow. What?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 855, the reincarnated version. Remember, we heard this a few weeks ago, and now we've brought it back, and there's a substitute. So I'd ask the substitute be distributed. And move the substitute. Everybody got it? All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as was just referenced, this seeks to establish a licensure and regulatory framework for a product that was used last year by 100,000 Virginians, primarily those with below a 620 credit score. So what this, in an unregulated fashion, this legislation is based on a model by the Council for State Governments, and what it does is establish the licensing procedure with the Bureau of Financial Institutions. The lenders must qualify for the license. Their license can be suspended, and there are enforcement mechanisms for both the Bureau of Financial Institutions and the Attorney General's office.
Mr. Chairman, I'm hearing that. I want to know what's the difference between the substitute and what you had before? Because the other one did not get out, so what's the difference between the two?
Okay, I can go right to that, Senator Spruill. The substitute addresses several issues that were raised in the initial hearing before this committee. The Virginia Consumer Protection Act now specifically applies, and that was something that Senator Suravel had mentioned. There's some well, let me run through all the changes, and then there's some clarifying language on the principal pay down. It was intended that the 5% minimum apply to the original principal amount although that apparently through some language difficulties was not clear in the original bill. So now that's clarified that the 5% minimum applies to the original principal amount. So,
Can I answer your question?
Yeah.
Anybody who makes a $5,000 loan or less has to be licensed?
3,000.
3,000.
3,000 is the cap now.
So suppose, is there a family exemption?
I think we talked about this before, Senator Sasslaw. That would not apply. That wouldn't apply. So it's and it is a $3,000 cap. So what you're looking at now with that provision is the maximum on the largest loan, the $3,000 loan, the maximum payout would be 21 months. And I think we've got a chart going around that gives you an example of what that would look like with the fees and charges. The fee schedule has been at 36% interest cap. The fee schedule has been changed. Below 1,500, it's 55 a day. Above 1,500, it's 45 a day. And so they're the essential changes in the substitute. And the rest of it, again, you all heard, these lenders, they don't take collateral, they don't assign wages, they don't take car title loan or car titles. It's completely free of collateral. And again, this is establishing a regulatory licensure fee scheme for this product that has heretofore been unlicensed and unregulated. And that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Senator Deeds, it's on page 18, Consumer Protection Act.
Mr. Chair, how many loans have both a fee and an interest that has to be paid?
Every loan has the interest rate and the fee.
How many other loans do that?
How many other?
In any category? I mean, mortgage.
They've all.
Tell me another loan that has both a fee and an interest.
I think everyone we've considered in here this year has the same scheme.
A fee. Huh?
All of them.
Same.
That's the bill.
Okay, anyone in support of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nicole Brenner with Reed Smith on behalf of the online lenders, would like to thank the senator for his work on this bill. I believe it addresses a number of the issues that were raised last time. Like I've said previously, 85% of our customers are subprime. This is an option that provides access to credit for those customers. I believe it was at least 100,000 loans last year that were provided under this format or a similar one, and believe this provides access to credit and another option for Virginia consumers. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I have one.
Senator Newman.
To one of the two of you, maybe we should have taken out of Servill's bill the online, because it seems like we've got two different policies coming out online. Is that where we are with both bills going through?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no technical conflict between them, no legal conflict between them. I can see Senator Servill made the point that perhaps there is a policy contradiction there.
Okay.
His bill can die tomorrow.
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, I know this is presumption, and I didn't vote in favor of it, so I couldn't reconsider. But if this bill passes, and I hope it will, maybe we should think about that one, whether or not it should have online. But that's it.
All right, there's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 855.
Can opposition speak?
And refer to finance, all those.
Mr. Chairman, here's my opposition.
You're speaking in opposition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dave Urban with the Attorney General's Office, Consumer Protection Section. We appreciate the changes that have been made, but there are still three significant concerns with the bill. First, this bill conflicts with and is inconsistent with Senator Locke's bill. Both of those bills regulate the universe of open-end credit plan loans, but they do so in vastly different ways. Second, the interest rate that will be permitted here with the changes, we've moved down from 352% to 270%. My understanding here is it would now be 234%. On a line of credit loan of up to $1,500. It'll be 198% on a line of credit loan between $1,500 and $3,000.
The biggest concern, however, is that there is no limit on the term of the loan. The loan can exist in perpetuity. There's been talk about allowing the loan to be paid down, the original balance, 5% a month. But that doesn't take into account that once you pay down that balance, you can reload and get additional credit back up to your credit limit. So the loan can still exist in perpetuity. To the bottom line, Senator Locke's bill closes the 3 existing loopholes to our consumer finance laws. This will essentially open one back up. And all you need is one loophole. This is the one that everyone will flock to. I urge you to oppose the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
All right, Senator.
the question he raised that there's no limit. Could someone answer that question for me, please?
There is a limit. It's a $3,000 loan, and you have to pay it off, and you pay it off in 21 months. You can apply for another loan, but it's one product, it's one loan.
But
Yes, sir.
it is an open-end credit loan. So if you take, he's correct, if you take the $3,000 loan or the $1,500 loan and you pay the 5% of the original balance, you would pay it off in 21 months. But the way open-end credit works, like a credit card or a home equity line of credit on your house, as you pay down the loan, if you start off with a $2,000 loan line of credit and you take it down to $1,000, then you have $1,000 of credit available to you. So you can do that in perpetuity. You can keep that line of credit open. At least that's the way open-end credit works under our credit laws.
Mr. Chairman, quick question from some confusion, I think, here. We've talked about that this is unregulated at the moment. If we do nothing, it will remain unregulated, regardless of Senator Locke's bill. Can you respond to that, both sides, perhaps, because I see heads going up and heads going sideways.
You are correct that it is unregulated or limited regulation at the moment. There's no limit on the interest rate cap or no limit on the interest rate under the existing law 6.2312, which is not modified by this bill. If Senator Locke's bill passes, there will be regulation and limits on the interest rate for these line of credit loans. They will be limited to 36% and an annual participation fee of $50. So Senator Locke's bill covers it, addresses it, and places limits on it. Existing law, there are no limits or very few limits, no limit on the interest rate.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Bell, Senator Locke's bill treats this totally differently. It would turn it into a retail credit card. There's no licensing structure for that. You don't get a license to do that. It is one code section that puts a 36% rate cap on it. This is a different product. The words open-end are not found in this bill. It's a different thing.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Partnership to Encourage Responsible Lending. I think there is a little bit of confusion. So what this bill does is it opens up a new loophole and codifies what illegal lenders are doing right now. So lenders that are currently violating Virginia law and have been for some time. A lot of the members of the Online Lenders Alliance and some other kinds of lenders that aren't members of that association who are currently violating Virginia law, they're trying to codify some of those practices into law. I am not yet aware of any other state that allows daily interest fees for these kinds of loans. And so that is, we think, problematic for borrowers to have an annual interest rate plus a daily fee. For many borrowers, it becomes more confusing. The structure in the bill doesn't say open-end, but the structure in the bill that's laid out is, and as in my discussions with Nicole in previous discussions, their only interest was to have open-ended credit available in the online space. And so even though it doesn't say open-end, the structure laid out in the bill still allows for that. It also doesn't close the loophole that was referred to by the Attorney General's office, 6.2-312, which allows for unlimited, there are no interest rate caps. That is not closed by this bill, so any of the online practices that are currently being done right now would still be allowed to happen. It makes that this bill still makes licensing optional if you're doing loans over the internet. You could still use that loophole to operate without any kind of restrictions, whereas Senate Bill 421 does close the loopholes and then forces people into a particular tract. I just want to also introduce, we have a borrower who had an internet loan a few years ago. Her name is Jolita Pinnick, and if this bill were in place when she had her loan, we wouldn't have been able to help her out of that situation because of the way this bill is structured. Because they were illegal and are still illegal right now, we were able to help her out of that loan.
Mr. Chair, I have a question to the speaker. What other loans have both an interest and a fee?
I'm sorry.
What are the loans have an interest and a fee?
There are many other loans that have interest plus a fee.
Such as, for example?
There's.
They're illegal.
Right. Yeah, Dave can answer.
Yeah, it's not that uncommon with the laws that we have in place right now, like payday loans. I think they have, under the existing framework, it's a 36% interest rate, but they're also allowed to charge a 20% processing fee and a $5 verification fee. So they do have fees that they're able to charge in addition to the interest rate. The issue is, how big is the fee?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's not like a one-time fee. This thing is 400, just a ton of fees.
It's an everyday fee. By my calculations, on a $1,000 loan, you would be paying a fee of $5.50 every day.
And what other loans do that? Who does that?
I don't know of any other in the open-end credit world. Obviously, there are examples in closed-end credit. Senator Locke's bill would also allow a monthly maintenance fee. So.
My name is Jolita Penix, and I was one of the ones that took an online payday loan in due of distress. I didn't read all the fine print, and by the time I finished, I think I took like $1,000. I paid back over almost $3,000 on that loan with penalty and interest. And I was so glad when I finished paying that loan, and I guaranteed that I would never, ever do that again, care whatever the situation is.
Thank you. All right, quickly, each person about 20 seconds. For it or against it?
Against. Amanda Silcox, Virginia Interfaith Center, and we oppose the bill.
Okay.
Jay Spear with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. I would point out that the bill says open-end credit twice, in line of credit 3 times, on lines 532, 617, 271, 272, and 275. So it is in fact an open-end loan, and it is in fact a loan that could go on in perpetuity. The main reason you should not vote for this bill is because it opens another loophole. You pass Senator Locke's bill, it closes all the loopholes. I've been down here on these bills for almost 20 years. Pass Senator Locke's bill, you won't see me down here on these bills anymore. Pass this bill, and you will continue having the loopholes, and you'll be back here every single year arguing about these bills.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Guy Rolling. I represent Allied Financial Services. They operate about 20 offices in Virginia. We support this bill. We support the regulation that this bill would establish. And I know previous speakers have talked about the fact that if you pass the Locke bill that, we'll be able to operate. That's absolutely not the truth. My company will be out of business. They will close their doors. And because that's a bill that passed in Ohio, and it has closed 800 loan offices in that state. It's a disaster for this industry. Thank you.
All right, you got a bill before us. The motion would be to report and refer. All right, all those in favor of reporting and referring to finance, vote aye. Those opposed, vote no.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
that's what we
Chairman.
did for today. Committee will rise. We'll meet tomorrow right after the session. about 6.